We're sending you an email to zoom in.
Might be crazy or never have to. Get a pocket. I knew. I'm not that spring, it's small.
I can get it 21st Street.
It's one thing. That's not.
Good for you.
In a pond.
In a pond, all right.
Projects related to them.
Don't get any of those, burning easy.
We lived in Schaefer, Christy and I lived in Schaefer like for 20 years.
Oh,
East side of Bartholomew, Kansas.
So I like that, but.
You're private, 110 acre land. So every 4th of July for,
I don't see that quality watch.
for 20 years. 4th of July, fire up Mariah, Barchetta City,
That's just a
B6.
That's just.
And we take the kids to the big cookout. I mean, it was a big, do the fireworks every week, no, every 4th of July. And that later.
We
I
can
never saw the
never.
ocean.
Taxpayers.
Taking for blue and get hard.
I can't stand salsa. I hate that stuff. It's
That's
down.
why they're so tough.
I don't like salt.
Nothing to stay.
I would much rather swim in a fresh water. I would rather swim in a
Boy, those
freshwater
torrents
water.
we got really did
Same here.
mess up the reservoirs.
That needs to start at the top.
All the torrents, the rain, pouring down rain we got.
Yeah, you guys can't, what's the deal? Because I saw a Facebook thing that that's way over.
We can't get under the bridge. We don't put it at the high water ramp at Cutright because.
Because they get some of the beaches, well, we used to go there all the time too.
And so we always put it.
Look at that, we're talking about
Right.
county bridges.
Right.
We can't get under the bridge.
Hi, Susan.
For bigger boats. Yeah.
That kind of sucks.
Susan, are we allowed to talk here, commissioners, or we remain silent?
No, like you can talk, ask you questions, or if you need to give information, yeah,
Okay,
like,
so we're not
um,
forbidden since we're not on the.
I'd rather have you sitting beside me instead of behind me.
Nah, I'd rather.
Scares
I know you're
Scares you.
But I know what you see coming.
He's back there making hand signals.
Joel, you're
Yes.
sitting on the wrong side of the table.
He's got the rubber band back there with the.
The smart ones are over on the other side.
Susan, I wasn't
Hey,
questioning your.
nobody ever accused me of
It's just that I was
this
just
before.
seeing that, that's why.
Go ahead with the rest of the stuff, then he's going to email me or the Zoom link when he's ready.
Who is?
Louis?
Oh, yeah. Bill's gonna need to email him a Zoom link right now.
Because he's not ready, because he didn't have it on his calendar either.
No, he told, I just looked in the email back 12th, he said he's gonna be at our July 3rd meeting.
He thought it was the 7th.
Yeah, well, he wrote, it said July 3rd.
7th is Sunday, isn't it?
No, it's Monday.
Yeah, that's
I
exactly.
know, I just talked to him.
He started partying early.
So, did you email him?
I did,
Okay.
and, Bill's gonna email him.
Okay, I just talked to him, so
Good, you verbally talked to him.
I'm assuming Scott's not gonna be here.
No, he's not.
Yeah, I'll take his mail back downstairs. Well, it's gonna be a peaceful meeting without Scott. Scott.
Well, it was only an hour.
We bought the whiteboard for him, bought the whiteboard to keep him occupied.
Yeah.
Scott's not gonna be here? No, just got a message he was.
Just core stuff.
Here, Gary, here's his number if you're interested in that.
Figure out.
What is it? Yes. So like, okay, let's do this.
I just don't want to finish really.
We can start and do some other little things before we get into Louis getting bored.
Yeah.
So, call the meeting to order, say the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We'll just look at some other items. The budget review process, how do we want to go about this? We used to have the, everybody comes before us for 15, 20 minutes. Let's have a discussion on that. What's the optimal way to do it? We don't have to do that particular thing. There's no mandate for that. So what do we see as the best way to review the budget for the people, departments?
I suggest that if we go through them and if we see there's an issue, call them in.
Okay?
That's my
Just
thought.
call it an issue. We also have assigned representatives to each department.
I've been seeing my people a lot, so.
We could have 3 people, 2 or 3 people go visit them if they have a question, or either visit them and call them before us at our work session preferably, or have set up a special meeting.
That's my thought.
I like your idea.
Call them
And I
in.
mean, we look at them ahead of time, and if we know that there's a particular issue or whatever, then we at least let them know that they're probably gonna be called in.
Right,
Yeah,
for
just
sure.
kind of heads up.
Yeah.
Not just have them stand by,
Yeah.
stand by.
All right. Any other thoughts?
Gary, you and I discussed this last Friday, 3 hours in my office.
And,
We covered this issue, we covered it, did we not?
okay, sure, summarize what we came up with, please.
Okay.
I wanted to bring it out in public, so it's not some people dictating what's gonna
That's
go on.
fine, that's fine. I have already started, okay? Julie and I are working extremely closely together. And as a matter of fact, when this meeting's over today at noon, then I'm gonna go down to Julie and collect the rest of the Form 1s. You guys familiar with Form 1s? No, you've seen a Form 1, do you know what a Form 1 is?
I evidently not.
I need to show you one. All right, the Form 1s basically is every department, there's 30. There's 30 departments. They are sent an Excel file from the auditor's office. Now, the challenge is we're not getting the Excel files back. We did from the commissioners, we did from the highway department. Working paper-based, there's 4 pages typically of Form 1. So I'm going to gather all of these Form 1s. I'm working with Reagan, with Reedy Financial, and I'm working very closely with Jerry Hickman, who's the rep, the CPA for our county. So hopefully today I can have all of these PDFs, all these Form 1s together. Then Monday, what I'll have to do is either I'm going to have to get the Form 1s transferred down to Reagan, because then Reagan takes it, they've got an Excel file that they use to input all this data so that they can upload it into their reporting system. The approach is I've got the month of July to basically get all of the data inputted and all the reporting completed. So then in August, at a month from now, at our first special session meeting, then I will have all of the big picture, high level reporting for you all to be able to go over. At issue is the general fund. It's estimated that there's approximately 10 million for 2026, a little over that. I don't have the exact number, but it's a forecast. Keep in mind, these budgets, the challenge with these budgets are totally interdependent upon the auditor's office. And it's interdependent of us being able to forecast what these revenues are going to be. And the big one is the general fund. Because the reason it's the big one is there are 25 departments that for the most part are all funded out of the general fund. Commissioner's office, for example, they got a big chunk of it. The law enforcement takes a big chunk of it, right? Those are the two big, I'm gonna call them BHAGs. This commissioner, because commissioners have got 4 funds that they pull from. And then obviously the law enforcement center, they've got the primaries, the general fund, and then they've got some other ones, revenues that come in as well. So as far as the general fund, if you remember, we all sent out a memo to the departments here telling them that they needed to be at 95% of the 2025 budget. Well, sure enough, what's happening is some of the ones that I received back is these budgets are over that number. And keep in mind, what we're solving for 2026, we're going to look at January through December of 2026, is real simple. We have to spend less than we receive. Fair? Because if you spend more than you receive, then you burn down your savings account, don't you? And in this context, they call it cash reserves. So we got to take a look at that, and I'll have that prepared and ready for, special session in August. That's going to tell us in those 25 departments who's over and how much ready. Right. So, and those departments that are in excess of the 2025 budget, we're going to have to address that issue. From there, we really get into, you have the health department, highway department, I've got their budget. I don't think that should be a big issue based on what we received. We have the health department, highway department, commissioner's office, the law enforcement center is going to be an issue. There's some issues there that we have to address that we've not addressed. All right. And then the big rocks is the group medical. To fully fund the group medical for 26, we're $2,850,000 if we really wanted to fund it the proper way. We don't have the money to do that. Okay. So, because the big rocks are labor costs, the group medical, we got $1.1 million going out in pension benefits. What are some of the, I'm losing my train of thought. There's a few of these employee benefit big rocks and labor costs that we're going to want to take a look at and just determine. I know how we funded it in the past. Because there's $1.5 million comes out of the commissioner's budget for group medical. So we've got to look at the funding sources and make a decision, have we done it, but, as far as best practices for 2024, 2023, is there a better way to fund that group medical expense and pension benefits and FICA? Keep in mind, you got FICA tax in there that we've got to pay. So those to me are the big rocks that we need to address, and so the goal is August is for us to have our special session meeting, and then out of that, depending on what it looks like, then have to go maybe meet with some of these department heads one-on-one, right? I don't see that there's any need to do a quote-unquote, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but an all-day 15-minute dog and pony
I
show.
agree with you.
Like we've done in the past. It's a waste of energy because if you've got a department that their budget is in line and nothing wrong with it, then there's nothing to discuss. And that takes time away from other issues like the employee benefits and, how do we fund that? Because again, and keep in mind also, and I can type this up and give it to you in a later date. The DLGF, the budgeting process, the way it works is you look at July 1 of 2025, and then you look at December 31st of 2025, so that you can determine the receipts and the disbursements on what the cash reserve balances are going to be. All right? Because those that 2025 year-end cash reserve balance is used by the DLGF to calculate the 2026, 12/31/2026 reserve balance. Now, the DLGF, we can spend as much money as we want until we burn the cash reserves down to zero. If that day ever comes. And so, for example, the general fund, let's say, this year I don't have it. Well, it was in our report that I handed you guys, and so going forward on these monthly reports, what you're going to want to look at is you're going to want to look at the revenues that we've received in versus the projected revenues. And then you're going to want to pay attention to the cash reserve and balance. So just think of it as your checking account. You got your deposits, you got your disbursements, how much I got left in the bank account. I mean, it's really what, and the key thing for us going forward for this year is we got to pay attention on these 30-day reports, pay attention to, especially on the general fund, is how much revenue have we received in. So that we can have because the challenge with the budget and the challenge with this financial situation is you better make sure your assumptions are accurate. We better make sure and hope and pray that the auditor's office has been able to stay on top of the workflow in order to make sure everything is posted. Because if it's not posted in there, then the numbers we're looking at aren't accurate, okay? So the audit is critical. The auditor's office is on top of everything that they're doing. Because without the auditor's office, then Reedy and what we're doing is worthless. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's like the bank sending your bank statement, and you get it, and they left off, nothing's posted, right? You're going, well, I know I made that deposit. Why isn't it showing up? So we're going to have to use August, okay? And we may need another meeting. We may need 2 of these special sessions in August. But the goal is we get done with August, and then come September, we got 3 weeks in September for the regular meeting to be able to pass that budget at the regular meeting, because my understanding, Julie, is that we have to advertise the budget 10 days prior to us
To publish it.
So we've got 6 weeks, right, from August 1 until the middle of September. So I'm going to use this 30 days, this July, to have everything done. All the report, easy reports, 1 page, easy reports, big picture. Let's look at the big picture. And then let me add this on the big picture. You want to build a new house. So you tell the contractor that here's the house I want to build. The contractor comes back and says the house is going to cost you $600,000. And you realize that's $200,000 more than you want to spend. Do you go after the contractor and start questioning the contractor on how many nails they're using? Right? Or how much wiring or what your plumbing is going to be in it? Or would you go in and say, oh, wait a minute, I wanted 5,000 square feet. I can't afford 5,000 square feet,
You need less house.
Yeah, we need less house. So, as a financial planner, with my background, we got to focus on the big rocks and not, argue and talk about, how much Brad Stocksdale spent on bullets. All right. Now, supplies, could we have a conversation if we find out, because I'll have this information, if we find out as a county we're spending, $1.5 million on supplies, should we then maybe dig in and say, okay, what are we buying? How could we cut that back? Yeah. So the reporting I'm going to give you is real high level, easy, 1 page, there won't be that many pages. And then I'm going to do that in conjunction with Reedy. Because the challenge with Reedy, they like to go out, they'll give us some reporting, but then they're going to start talking about 27, 28, 29, 30. And I told Jerry, I said, Jerry, we don't need to be talking about 28, 29, and 30. Let's just keep it focused on 25. What's going on with 25? Let's get prepared for 26, because as long as we can hold expenses at less than our revenues, then we don't have a problem, do we? And if you can do that for a few years in a row, you'll build your cash reserves slowly. And all the thing is I just hope and pray that we don't have any major wobble on from the commissioners, important and urgent, going, oh my God, we need $1.6 million because, you know, this blew up. And then, you know, then here we sit, what are you gonna, you know, how are you gonna pay for it? Does that, any questions?
I mean, that brings us back to just basically if we have a problem, either they come in and see us or we go to them, so.
And what I want you to pay attention to is, here we are, and we're all old enough to realize that we'll be here again in a few months in 26, doing it for 27, right?
Yeah.
So my goal and my objective is let's work together to define a very repeatable process that we all get used to, and we do the same thing year after year, and make it easy, make it quick. So, and like, for example, Susan, one of the things I've got to do in July is I've got to go in these Form 1s, because the Form 1s has all of the expenses, is I've got to go in and extract all of the labor costs out of the Form 1s, so that we have a separate report just on labor costs by department, with all the employees, the pay grades, the pay, you know, the pay grades, FICA tax, we've got the FICA tax, and then help me out, Julie, losing my train of thought. But anyway, I'll have a separate report, because then once on just on the labor, right, total employees, all that, because then I've got to get that to Susan. My goal is to have that to you by August. Because then Susan has to take that, and then she's got to do her magic and create an illegal salary ordinance, which I hope and pray, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get that passed in October.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and then the end of October, we're done, it's over, and now we can start focusing on 27. Right? Because we do the same thing year after year after year after year after year. So, any questions, any feedback?
Thank you. That was right out there.
Yeah, I'm just, whatever I have to do in July, I mean, I've already told Cheryl, I'm shutting down Brown County. It takes me, 60 hours a week to do it, and that's what it takes. And just do it and get it done. And I'm gonna work with Reedy, okay?
And me.
And, well, it's Julie, me, and Jerry, and Reagan. Reagan's part of this too. He's kind of been behind the scenes guy, yeah. And then in our July council meeting, we will have, I already talked to Jerry, we will have that 3-page report that you guys got. So please, I encourage you to just take some time, review it,
It's awesome.
familiarize yourself with it, okay? So that we then can hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months get to a place to where we can start discussing it, right? And then having conversations with Julie. And last thing I'll say this, what I learned, it's been the last 3 or 4 months. I was going by that 1782, which is the report that GLGF sends out that approves their budget, right? Well, I was operating off of their forecast and that for the revenues. Well, what I didn't realize is they weren't accurate on miscellaneous revenue. So what we've got to do as a council is we got to pay attention to miscellaneous revenue that's calculated inside that general fund. And we got to, work with Julie
That won't
to
work.
make sure
He
we
needs to
got
join this
accurate
team.
numbers. Because to me, if we can get, if over the next couple of years, all of us collectively pretty much know what the revenue is going to be from one year to the next, right? Because it's like income tax. If the country, if we get hit with a hard recession, we got 10% unemployment, then that your income tax revenue is going to get hit, right? Because you get unemployment. So your revenues are going to drop. Well, you should be able to kind of calculate how much those revenues are gonna drop. Property tax, on the other hand, you may be unemployed, but people are gonna figure out how to make that mortgage payment because they don't wanna lose their house. So the property tax, by and large, should be somewhat fairly stable. But considering the fact that we're very dependent on income tax, that's really what cash flows this county. Because we have so many people working outside the county, that live in the county, that are paying, we're 2.5%. We're all paying over 2.5%. So we as a council, we can pay attention to these
Hi,
revenues.
this is Laura. I'm in the IT department. What's your email?
And then, because the expenses, for the most part, should be, as long as we don't buying, the sheriff's department aren't getting all brand new cars every year, right? Or somebody's wanting to, put some kind of high dollar
Okay,
car.
can I just read you?
The expenses should be fairly even, and you got inflation, of course, right?
I think that might work.
It's- We should be able to get to the point where this is pretty easy, and then we all internalize it, we know where we
I'll
are.
give you the team
Now we can
meeting.
communicate it to the
Like
department.
the meeting ideas.
Because the other thing too is I think the department heads need to be aware of where we are, as well as the taxpayers need to understand how this system works, the cost, what's it cost to run.
So you'll just
the county.
join a team's meeting and input the meeting, the IT impact.
Makes sense?
No, that's okay.
Very nice.
Okay, thank you. Good, so we got that down. That item taken care of. We're still trying to get Louis tied in from our Zoom link. So we'll get him shortly. Another thing I wanted to touch base with, about a year and a half ago, some of you weren't here. We talked about staying above the line. We as
I'm gonna send this from
professional
a different.
people who are hired by the people to use our power to their benefit. And some of the staying above the line, we talked about issues such as not doing power trips, personal agendas, personal narratives, factions, things of that nature. We're not here to, the objective was to put as much energy or power as possible to serving the people, not divert it to saying, oh boy, I'm gonna make myself look important because I got a position of power. That's not appropriate. We need to be more professional than that. Now, the thing I realized about that, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that also people will come before us in meetings and ask us in some ways to say, and you can sort of, we need to use discretion, but it's like, we can't do a personal vendetta just because we have power. That's not professional. It's an abuse of power. Well, some people may come to us and ask us to say, hey, I have a personal vendetta. Can you guys use your power to do something in the county? And it's like, well, no, we don't do it with ourselves. We can't do it with you. So it's just a realization that we set the standard. And the other thing that they say about organizations is the culture is set from the top. We are setting the culture.
Gary's talking,
So
but once he's done.
we can't be the ones who are abusing it, because if we abuse it, then they say, well, why can't I abuse it? So the fact is that as we relate with them, we can say, okay, well, and using discretion to say it's just not appropriate to do this particular action. So we need to be aware of those things. Just as though we can't abuse power, we can't empower people or factions or individuals out there to abuse power. Any thoughts on that? Other than that, or that's all I wanted to say. Okay, Karen agrees.
Gary, I'm gonna steal your screen, so that whatever you
Yeah,
share.
go ahead, take it.
up there.
I don't need it.
You're good.
Louis Louis, everybody ready? Louis Louis, remember this one?
Yep.
Oh.
He has no
I love that song so
sound.
much.
Tired of it? Remember that song? Louis Louis.
Hey, everyone. Oh, it's weird seeing yourself on the screen. That's great. So yeah, sorry so much about the mix up here. I just didn't have it on my calendar and knew it was today, but didn't have a time. So that's totally on me. I'm really excited to chat with you all, share a little bit of information on ClearGov and, what we offer to counties and, how we would help you all specifically. So My plan here today is I have a couple of slides just to walk through, and then I'm happy to share some live software as well if that's appropriate, but really wanted to have a high-level conversation around what ClearGov offers and, again, the associated benefits. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
Thank you, Louis.
Okay. You all see my screen here where it says, we make the tools, you make the difference?
Mhm.
Yes. And at any point, feel free to stop me if, there's anything I say that you want to unpack further, if you have questions, but just kind of setting the stage, and I've had a couple of conversations so far, and I've learned a lot about, some of the needs of the county. I've been with ClearGov for 7 years. I've worked with a number of counties, cities, towns, you name it, all of different sizes, primarily with, small to mid-sized local governments. And more often than not, when folks are building a budget, they're using a combination of different tools. I know that you all use Lao as your accounting system, and that works really well for a lot of purposes. It sounds like there's a lot that's being done in Excel as well. And, look, that gets the job done. I don't ever talk to anyone about ClearGov and our budgeting tools because they can't build a budget, right? Excel gets the job done, but it can be scary. And, getting on the same page is tough enough as it is. If the tools aren't designed to support that and designed to support and easily discover, hey, why is this number being requested? Why are we bumping this up and dropping this down? If the kind of information behind the data isn't readily available, it does cause slowdowns and it does cause confusion. And that's what happens pretty frequently with Excel, which is what I see with a lot of other customers. So a lot of folks are looking for ways to really kind of regain that ownership, regain that total control over the budget and over the data to ensure that everyone's looking at the most up-to-date, accurate information at any given point. One thing I always like to mention about ClearGov is we are exclusively endorsed by the National Association of Counties. This was about 3 years ago. They underwent a full search. They looked at, I think it was 13 different vendors who do something similar to what we do. They did a thorough evaluation and decided to partner with us at ClearGov. They felt that our offerings were the best fit for their member counties. And I'm trying to keep things simple, right? We have 4 core pillars that we really believe in. One is right? Our onboarding team is made up of ex-local government finance officers. They're the ones who the legwork with this economic employee, so that your role in this is really just get ease of use is big for us. Like a software system can have all the bells and whistles in the world. If you can't figure out how to use it, what's the point? And we really took that to heart. We wanted to make sure that this is, robust without being overwhelming. Easy to connect to your existing systems. And I have a slide next where I'll talk just briefly about how this works with Lao. But then the last piece is portability. I know that, again, Lao is your accounting system that you're using for a lot of different things today. ClearGov wouldn't replace that. ClearGov sits on top of Lao, works with Lao to share that data. The goal here would be the budget is built in ClearGov, right? So it's replacing those Excel spreadsheets, it's replacing the re-entry into Lao, everything like that. So the budget would be contained within ClearGov. That's going to mean extra things. That's going to mean that at the end of the day, when you have your budget built out, that can flow seamlessly into Lao, and vice versa. Any tools, things like that that you want to get into ClearGov from Lao can flow into ClearGov. But it also means that ClearGov can become a reporting and dashboarding center for you. It's going to make it really, really easy for you all to have ownership over that data, to not have to, wait for various reports, things like that. ClearGov has a whole lot of standard reports out of the box, ready to go, just based off the most common use cases that we've seen with other counties. You can also customize. So again, this is a way to really ensure that you're able to get any data that you want in any format that you want instantly. Last kind of slide here. So ClearGov, we play in a lot of different realms. We are module based, right? Every kind of header that you're seeing here is a different ClearGov module. Based off of the conversations that I've had so far with the team, it really sounds like the focus is going to be right here in the budgeting component. Really helping to add efficiency to that budget process for Julie and her team, for department heads, as well as for you all, provide you with an easy window into the budget, a way to really track the budget at every phase, to be able to see all of the logic and the justification behind different requests that were submitted, different changes that were made. So that's really where we'll focus today. I want to pause at this point. I know I just talked for a good interrupted period there, but I want to pause and see, how this is resonating so far, if there are any questions so far.
We're mesmerized.
Mesmerized. Awesome. Yeah, well, with that in mind, I'm happy to go in. I'm not going to do a full, walkthrough, right? I'm not going to go through every nook and cranny of ClearGov. I think that would kind of defeat the purpose. Really, my goal here is to share with you a quick overview of each of the three modules that we're focusing in on. Focusing kind of on what they do, as well as, why they're important and how others are using these to their advantage. So first off, ClearGov, it is cloud-based. We're on Amazon Web Services, on their government platform, and then cloud platform. All of the tools are in one place, so nothing's siloed. Even though you can work on your operating budget here, your capital budget, your personnel, it's all right here, and they all flow into one another seamlessly. So even though you're working on them in different workspaces, there's no re-entry of data. It's all going to coalesce at the end of the day for you. So I'm starting with the operational budgeting tool, and just because I'm looking at a tiny laptop screen.
We got a question here.
Oh, sure.
So, and then I'll come closer to the mic. So you said this is a cloud-based system, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I assume you're using some level of interface through APIs and things of that nature with the Lao system and data in order to gain access to that data?
So we actually, to keep things cost effective and frankly, to keep them working a little bit more seamlessly, we don't set up a direct integration with Lao. What we do is an import-export model, and Lao is a system that we are really, really well versed in. So as far as sharing data, ClearGov is set up to have data exports that are in the format that Lao needs that data to be in to accept it, and vice versa. So it makes it really, really easy for data to flow back and forth. And the other piece to that is, frankly, those direct integrations are really, really expensive, and they break constantly. So that leads to things like that.
So then my next question would be is, it's not really considered a real-time system then?
So it's not real time as in up to the minute. Frankly, what most of our customers have used it for and told us is, look, when we're budgeting, we don't need it to be up to the minute, because when their department heads, for example, are submitting requests, they don't need to know what that actual is that minute. They need to know generally, what does it look like as of this week or as of this quarter or what have you. And that's, a really easy flow of information to keep it, as up to date as necessary.
So what is a typical time for the data to go from LAO to the iCloud system? Is it like a weekly refresh, an hour? Is that something that's customizable or settable, or is there pretty much just a standard that you have built into the software?
Yeah, so you all get to determine your time frame. We have customers who are doing a daily refresh. We have customers who are doing weekly, monthly, you name it. So that's configured by you all.
Okay, all right.
Who controls the refresh?
The refresh, so I'm going to assume having some systems. It's typically controlled by setting up protocols that allow them access on a certain period of time to go through LAO. It'll have to be coordinated with either a hole being drilled through either our firewall services. That's why it needs to be closely integrated with the IT support, right? So it just, again, I'm just trying to bring some level of question and knowledge because I've integrated countless systems, and our expectation when we always integrated those systems is we wanted it as real time as we could, right? But again, in the budgeting cycle and those kinds of things, probably not necessary. But if we as commissioners are trying to go and use this as a reporting mechanism, then we're going to have to understand how frequent that data is updated and when it's being updated, because you get into that back and forth of, well, I got this number, you got this number. And if we don't understand that, then you can't talk the same language.
Thank you.
If you've got it set up for a daily refresh, can you override that and do a manual refresh at any time?
I'd rather do it daily.
I wouldn't recommend that.
No.
I mean, if you get two.
I wouldn't recommend that, because that takes overhead and that takes access. And I would just basically work with the constraints of defining what your expected refresh is, because that means that may, and again, I don't know if they've had customers to do that, but that typically ends up taking customization.
No,
Go into
on your
manual.
part, if you want to do that, say, just refresh what's right now.
No, that's again, you have an interface being built between LAO, which is a completely separate system, which is an iCloud-based system.
Right.
And that data is traveling back and forth at a set period of time. So when we used to have our MRP systems that we had, the global systems, it took a 24-hour period to refresh and recycle that data to keep the transactions. Because there's huge amount, now we're talking about huge amounts of data, okay? This is probably not going to be huge amounts of data, but it's still going to be a considerable amount that's going to take time, okay? So just wanted to ask that question, clarity.
Yeah, Louis, Tim Clark, my question is, you had me, you're gonna get rid of Excel, or we don't use Excel, but I'm just kind of curious. Like Excel, it's kind of standalone. You go ahead and make changes in Excel, there's no audit trail. There may be formulas in there, no audit trail. When that's changed, it's just from an auditing standpoint, it makes me kind of nervous, on the Excel kind of thing. So it's just a reporting thing. Here's the information and here's what you're given and don't touch it. When we talk about your budget system here, we're getting information from LAO, we're getting it back up. How much change, if any, can we make within that system to influence maybe what's in LAO, or do we? What's that look like?
So I want to make sure I fully understand. So are you asking, how much control do you have over what's editable, what can be changed, what can't, and, kind of what the source of truth is?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so this system is fully access driven. So you can have as many users as you want in the system. Not all of them are going to have the same permissions, and that's something we help you to set up from the get-go. Generally, what we see is, look, department heads or anyone who needs to make budget requests, they're probably going to be set up as, we call them requesters, where you're going to give them a certain window into the budget, certain accounts, certain line items that they can see, that they can touch. You can make anything view only. You can make, you can kind of limit those actions as needed so that everyone is only seeing and editing what they should be seeing and editing. At the same time, you can have kind of your global, editors, someone who is maybe an admin or has permission to edit anything. You can have folks who are strictly view only and comment only. And to your point, yeah, it is scary that, with Excel, anyone can go in, change a cell or a formula or what have you, and there's no history of that. So what I had done here was tabbed over to, and right now it's boring because I haven't done anything other than, created the budget, but there's a full audit trail in all of ClearGov's budgeting tools. So this is going to tell you exactly who did what the original values were, when the changes were made, and it is searchable. So we want to make sure that not only is everyone only seeing and touching what they should be seeing and touching, but that you have a full history to know, hey, if something did get changed accidentally for some reason, how do we remedy that? Who did it? How do we fix it? What permissions do we need to change? You have this full audit trail here to back you.
Okay, good to hear. My other question is, you guys mentioned when I looked at some of your stuff, you mentioned you used AI. Can you address how you integrate that tool into your system? Or did I take that out of context?
No, so you definitely didn't take it out of context. The primary use case right now, and we are exploring other ways to do that in the kind of budgeting tools. The short answer is in our budgeting tools today in time, we don't really integrate AI. It's more so in our budget book and reporting tools. We've used ChatGPT to be able to look through, some of the data, especially for like a budget book or an annual report that someone wants to publish. A lot of the narrative in those is just explaining. That's not something that someone necessarily needs to spend time on. So we have a ChatGPT plugin there where folks can use to look through the data, type up a bunch of narrative and explaining the data. That's our primary use right now of AI. We are exploring other ways to do that within our budget suite.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question also. You alluded to, I think, the source of truth. Which program, LAO or ClearGov, becomes the source of truth, or how does that work? And if you throw AI into it, that's something else.
Yeah. So what we always say is, look, ClearGov would be the vessel to build your budget. ClearGov can also be the vessel to run reports, to pull information out in an easy to consume way. Frankly, we always, just because it's always been kind of the standard, we always say, hey, LAO is going to be your source of truth. LAO is kind of your data repository. It's your GL. It's where everything and anything is stored. ClearGov is a tool to build out that budget, to add efficiency, to be able to, and I'll show some examples of this, run different scenarios as well, because we want you to be able to be, agile in your planning. Not to say you aren't now, but we want to provide tools that help make it easy to run different what-if scenarios and to the impact of, this thing that might be coming versus, what if it doesn't, right? So ClearGov is more of the tool to save time, to be able to run those different scenarios, to be able to kind of assist as you're going through those conversations. It is also a reporting vessel. LAO is going to be the primary data storage center, right? Once your budget is completed in ClearGov, once you've built it out, you're going to want to get that into LAO. But again, everything lives there.
Okay, another question is our state controller says we're using different fund numbers for different organizations. Is that true, Julie? So you enter it as one, but then it has to show up somewhere else as a different fund number,
That's
even though
correct.
it's the same info. They're trying to rectify that. I don't know if that's our local state or
State.
it's state. Is there any filter within ClearGov to say, okay, in this, who are you talking to, DLGF or SPOA, or who is
Well,
it?
you have numbers for the DLGF and you have different numbers for the state.
Yeah.
And then we have different numbers, so.
Okay, is there any filter in ClearGov that could say, okay, this goes in, but you're gonna talk to these people, it's this thing, this fund number, and a fund number in another area?
So if I understand correctly, you have your chart of accounts and you're kind of mapping there with your account numbers, but then those need to be different based off of who you're reporting to.
Yeah, the numbers are the same, the fund number is different depending on the reporting agency.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so what we do to address that, and I'll try not to get too in the weeds, but we have this concept of dimension mapping, where in your chart of accounts, right, we map your chart of accounts into ClearGov. There are going to be different ways that needs to be sliced and diced and grouped, for reporting purposes, things like that. So what we do is, as part of data mapping, that's information you send over to our team so that we make sure that this is something that can then be, broken out in different ways. So for example, right, maybe there are going to be different funds, even though it's the same account number, right? You can pull these up to the top, and I actually also filtering by department, but you can then start to view this from different angles. So if you wanted to pull this and say, hey, I want to view this breakdown by fund, or I want to view this by object or by department or what have you, you're able to do that. And again, that's all part of the initial setup. Our team works to understand how you need that to look and function, and then they set up the dimensions so that it can be broken out in those different ways.
Does that sound helpful, Julie?
Yeah, the state and the DLGF the State Board of Accounts and the DLGF are now trying to integrate their numbers so that they all match.
Yeah, trying to.
That would be fabulous, because it's been crazy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's something I've heard, because I'm chatting with other folks across the state, and I've heard that does become a little bit of a headache, and really hoping it all becomes uniform, because I know that would alleviate more than one headache.
Yes, it will.
Okay, another question. Are you currently in Indiana? And are you in Indiana counties that deal with Lao?
Yes, so we are with Madison County, Tipton County, who else? We have it written down. I'll send over a follow-up with, I know there's like 5 other counties right now who we're working with. I'll send over an email with all the names.
Okay.
I've actually done a follow-up with that, and the AIC is actually recommending that.
Okay. Well, he said the National Association's recommending it, or partnering with them. So, all right.
Yeah, and we, right now, I'm having a ton of conversations too. I know that we only work with about 5 counties in the state so far, but frankly, my hope and thought is that number is gonna go up pretty quickly here. But just to give you all a quick sense of some of the reporting capabilities in line while you're budgeting, right? So one of the things I always like to show off is right here, where within ClearGov, I know in Excel, most folks, when they're looking at their budget sheet, they're looking for historic trends. They're looking to understand, hey, where have we been? Because that needs to dictate where we're going, and we need to be able to justify this. A lot of folks have what you're seeing here, a bunch of different columns of historic budget and actual figures. In ClearGov, you're able to simplify that a bit. And when I say you, it can be you all, it can be department heads, whoever needs to be able to see this. These metrics bars, these are going to correspond to whatever account, whatever line item I'm looking at. And this is showing the budget versus actual in real time. So we're seeing that trend without having to analyze, 6 columns of data or anything like that. It's going to show us very plainly, hey, how are we doing, right? Are we consistently over budget here? Are we consistently under? Is this an area where we can afford to cut, right? And then beside that, you're going to have all of the relevant data that you need. And this isn't just in the build, because all of this can be included in reports as well. You know, any notes, right? And just for example, I'll just write justification, but if there's any justification as to why this request is being made, that's going to be there right in line. That's always something you can look at and see while you're having conversations around this. Attachments, maybe there's a quote for new equipment, something like that. Those can all be right in line. And there's a full comment section. This is essentially like an email thread right on the line item level or account level, where when you all are reviewing, if you want to leave almost like a sticky note and say, hey, I don't know if this is, you know, the right number, or I don't know, maybe we need to discuss this decision here. You all can have access to be able to leave comments and have a discussion right on that line item. This can also bring, you know, whoever is invested in this line item with emails to let them know, hey, there's, you know, a response to your question or your comment. And again, this is all existing here, so you're able to have those conversations on the budget right here in line and not have to go out to a disparate email thread or, you know, remember a conversation that was had. Again, we're, from a global standpoint, we're trying to arm you with all of the information we can to be able to back your decisions easily, right? Be able to say, hey, the data is right here. It supports what we're looking to do.
So can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So in that field, so in essence, is notes assumed, and going back and understanding again, is that particular field mapped to a standard field in Lao, or is that the one that's simply maintained at the cloud level?
Yeah, so the answer is either or. If you want this to be something that strictly exists in ClearGov, if you want the notes to strictly live in here, they can. Most of our customers, we map that back so that those can flow into Lao as well. Lao's, you know, alongside those budget numbers for that certain year. That's a choice you all would get to make during implementation.
Okay, so are there information items that you're providing on this cloud-based app or overlay that are solely maintained in that environment and not in Lao, or are they all mappable?
So I guess I want to make sure I'm fully understanding. Are you asking, you know, essentially everything that you're entering in ClearGov, can that be mapped to flow into Lao so that there's no duplicate, you know, re-entry?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest.
It's not so much as duplicate reentry. It is simply saying, like we said earlier when Gary said, what's the truth, or what is the system of truth? And so what I'm saying is, there's not going to be any data in this application that cannot or should not reside in Lao.
Should know.
Correct. So all of this information can flow into Lao. This is your vessel to build out the budget, to report on the budget, to have all of these tools for insight purposes. This is all designed for your GL purposes, for your source of truth. This exports to Lao so that all of the data is going to be housed there.
Okay, and so do you have any information as it relates to the counties that you are in at this point? Has your system been used to support or provide, or been used as a resource for their audits that they conduct to the State Board of Accounts?
That I'm not sure of. Let me do some digging and see what information I can come up with there, and I'll follow up with that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Down so I don't forget.
Can we, Gary,
Yes.
this subject matter, as far as I'm concerned, is going to take an enormous amount of time and energy on all of us, kind of county-wide,
Once we get it to absorb it, you mean?
before we even think about signing a licensing agreement with them. There's a lot of stuff that we need to flush out prior to ever thinking about signing a licensing agreement.
Okay,
So it's 5 after 10, we've got still quite a bit of stuff on the agenda. And I would encourage Kevin and anyone who's got concerns to reach out directly with Louis. Is that all right, Louis?
Absolutely.
So you're willing to have private one-on-one conversations with those within our county that need more, have clarifying questions?
Absolutely. I am more than happy to do that. Anyone can shoot me over an email if you want to schedule some time with me. I'm happy to do that. What I'll also do, I know I have a couple of follow-up questions to get you all some clarity on. I'm also going to send over, we have quick, I think they're each 5 minutes. They're 5-minute overview videos, just high-level walkthroughs. So I'll send those as well of these 3 modules in case anyone wants to take a look at those too.
Right. So the only other, the other part of this, which I'm not trying to derail this. I'm just,
No, you're not.
I'm trying to
You've asked some really good questions.
Yes.
So, so the thing about it to me is being involved in this, and again, this is at a much larger industry level, the timeline in which you go from starting the activity of integration and finishing the activity integration, because in that you have to make sure that you have clean and clear processes and controls related to that. You have to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what you want to be mapping in fields ways, especially around if we've got a need to where you had different account numbers and all those kinds of things. And then my concern obviously is identifying the resource needs on both sides as it relates to that. And I know a huge part of integration is testing. And that means putting a lot of work into putting together the scenarios that the system's meant to facilitate, right? And that takes time. And in order to build confidence in ourselves and in the public, you want those check boxes checked, right? And we're a little bitty county, and we only have 2 IT people, and it's not an implementation of a system of any sort over that is not an easy chore. So I'm just,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I support that. Because that's what I told Louis when I first talked to him a couple months ago, is that the system has a lot of merit conceptually, but there's an enormous amount of work that we have to do to flush out everything, to make sure we have, to me, that we have the capacity to be able to manage this system.
Yeah.
If not, then
Well, and just throwing things as concerns and just having experience in this, the one thing is that there is a means by which the data has to be synchronized from one system to the other. Who has ownership of making sure that that synchronization is happening and it's accurate?
Right, we have to take all, there's a lot we have to take through.
Right, so.
Yeah. So if we can table this and.
yeah, okay, along with what Jim was saying, we'll table this, but before we do, I want to ask one question. Does anyone perceive any major hurdle versus benefits that we need to discuss right here with Louis in public? Anyone? Otherwise, we're just gonna do it privately.
Well, there's a lot of work that we've got.
I'm not saying there's work, I'm just saying a major hurdle that would thwart the whole system.
This is not a decision we should take lightly, so.
No, we're not.
Yeah, right.
Just want to see what's going on publicly. Well, it sounds like we don't have any major questions, Louis, so we'll just have to go into the individually talking with you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate everyone's time this morning. I'll hop off. Like I said, feel free to reach out to me one-on-one, or I'm happy to come back to a group session. But in the meantime, hope everyone enjoys Independence Day here and enjoys some well-earned time off.
All right. Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.
Appreciate it. Okay.
revenue, the excess revenue there. They have no risk, the taxpayers have a risk. And now we fund not only on this kind of thing, but we also fund like Thrive, the commissioners do. Thrive Alliance is 10 or 15,000, spray and neuter 20,000. Mental health we do for adults, that's another 10,000. We got a bunch of onesies and twosies that are generally social kind of programs, not core government business. But now we've got that vehicle, you know, on the revenue for the music center. So I'm curious, when you look at all these players, so we've got the commissioners, we got the council, now we have the foundation that gets 75% of that excess revenue. How does that play on something like this?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a question of whether you can create kind of that partnership that she's talking about and have the community foundation fund that. Yeah, from the perspective of, can commissioners just pay for this out of a line item in your budget? Depends on what your line items are.
Economic development, for instance.
I don't know, does it qualify for economic development, right?
Well, I mean, you're increasing the value of properties by maintenance, so their assessed values will probably go up.
Yeah, but I mean, usually when we think about economic development, we're thinking about some infrastructure things within the county to spend it on.
So it depends on how that's defined.
Right, right. So, I mean, obviously, like the things you said, the social programs that you said, right, you have those in your line items in your budget, so that's why you're funding those, right? This wouldn't be something that you probably have in there right now, so the question is, right, can you find money within your budget if this is what you want to do? And if you can't find money, then Whitney has to know she's got to find it someplace else in order to qualify for this grant.
I'm just who's up first here.
Yep, yeah. I mean, it is a little tricky, right? Trying to find the matching money for grants, but if you can connect with some partnerships so that the county's maybe not funding the whole 55, maybe you're putting up, if you've got, you know, a line item that still has $5,000 in it, that you can say, we can put $5,000 toward this. Can we have some help from the community foundation?
Or do you guys have leverage over that 75% of the community foundation?
Do we have leverage?
Yeah, you have leverage. I mean, 75% of that excess revenue goes to music center. Where's our leverage on that? I mean, we got an agreement.
You know, it's not to the community foundation, but to the music center?
Music center, 75% of the excess revenue from the music center goes to the foundation.
Yeah.
You guys determine, you influence the amount of profit that thing can make based on your review of their budget, CBC budget, how that revenue from the innkeeper's tax is going to be spent.
Yeah, that's all in flux right now with the 5 to 8%, so we're just trying to find where those buckets are going to be.
Yeah, Tim, can I piggyback off of your question on policy? Like, for example, in 2025, how many grants has the county in total applied for from all sorts of different sources?
That'd be Julie.
What? Because when I don't know what I don't know, so, but I do know that, you know, the grant, Republican and Democrats here, so I'm sure you're looking at everybody's brother's looking for free money, all right? And the challenge with free money is, with free money, there's always attachments to how you can spend that money. And my concern as a council member is simply, how much do we encumber the county with all these varying different individuals wanting to go apply for this free money with the match, and how do we fund the match from one year to another if it's coming out of the county coffers? Because what you're raising is a completely different issue, which is the split on net revenue out of the Maple Leaf that goes to the foundation. So I don't know that we have a committee. I don't know that we even have any policy on this.
You do on grants.
Well, I'm just talking about as a county-wide.
You do on matching grants. They've got to come to you guys and
Yes.
and Julie keeps track of that inventory.
Yeah,
So we got control over that.
Right, but see, I don't have any reporting coming out of the auditor's office knowing how many grants have been applied for, what
We have
matches.
about 17
Yeah, see, we don't have any communication going
No.
on at all, so I'm in the dark, I have no idea.
Okay, but, okay.
And that's a problem.
We fixed that probably last year, didn't we?
Right, so, yeah.
Like Chad Jenkins came to you guys and
Yeah,
said,
that-
hey.
that's
That
something
was
that
a
the
good one, 'cause there
policy
was no match.
Right.
So it's no
addresses.
brainer.
But everybody that's got a match, they brief the council.
Mhm.
Julie knows
Yeah,
that tracks.
and just not to bring up the past, but I will bring this up. In the fall, the fourth quarter of 2022, I was in a meeting that there was an individual that signed a $3.5 million grant with AR, or with, what's the main?
Okra?
No, it wasn't Okra, it was what's the other grant thing? I forget the acronym. But they came to us, I was in the meeting with the grant writer and, the engineer, and they hit us up for $500,000. Out of, it's cash out of the county coffers. And, yeah, right, so I'm over here operating.
NDOT,
Huh?
was that for the one for NDOT?
It was a-
Let's not get into, we
That
don't
one?
bring it up, but it was, it's the one that. it's
Somebody went out and found the
Revolving,
grant,
state
sold it to
revolving
us.
fund.
Yeah.
State, it's the state.
Yeah.
It was a $3.5 million
Yeah.
data, this individual, they'd given it to us. And the next thing we know is we're in a meeting and they're sitting there saying, hey, you guys got to cough up $500,000, and we didn't have $500,000. So this is my concern, this is little. And I'm just looking at it more of an aggregate countywide from one year to the next. How do we fund these matches? So, because I don't think, Julie, that we have a line item or, or let's say, we haven't created a fund,
Yeah, we have not.
4,000 series fund specifically that we funnel money into every year specifically for grant matches. We've not done that.
No.
And I don't know that, I think it would be a best practice for us. We need to.
Yes.
Right. And develop that language on that fund of how that money is to be used for what grants. So that's, put another thing on the to-do list.
Okay, the other question I have is, Whitney, is our county conducive to your services, being our LMI and all those things?
Yeah, so I did want to touch base with you all. I get a lot of questions about the income survey. So currently, they're using a new ACS level data from 2016 to 2020. Well, you can say, okay, those are pre-COVID numbers. Things have changed a lot since then. However, when you look at the low moderate income percentage for the county, it is about 40% LMI. You need to be 51. How you can argue that is if your margin of error puts you over that 51%, so plus or minus this. Previously, when the income survey was completed some years ago, there was no margin of error. They had no idea what they were doing, and they said, okay, fine, you can do one. This time, however, they do have margin of error, and it's only 5%. So you're below that 51% at a countywide level. I've tried to talk to them about dissecting the county and going by census tracts, knowing areas of Bean Blossom, Gnawbone, Helmsburg, all these other places are in need of planning documents. And I've tried to get the property tax roll, but I don't think that information is available by census tract. At least that's what the assessor's office told me. If we use utility rates to determine the number of residents, there are so many fragmented utility systems, people aren't hooked up, it's just kind of a mess. And then we go, if you contact Brown County Water, they're outside of the county too, so we're no longer helping county residents with your money. So it just have run into a lot of hurdles with trying to get that done. I reached out to the director of grant services and I said, hey, Brown County has got some issues going on with this income survey. How do we figure this out? And he said, no matter how you cut it, it is unlikely, unless we change a policy, that Brown County right now would qualify for an income survey. So they did have a survey. I gave them my feedback. Brown County is a unique situation. I can't find this one variable I'm looking for. And so if they change that, if we can go above the, margin of error and qualify, that would be one thing. But so a lot of those area-wide benefit, low and moderate income grants are not available. I will say that ARA does not just do OKRA. We do other grants with the DNR. I shared some information with Kevin about the Land and Water Conservation Fund. I was told that we were not ready. With SS4A, finding a planning grant for the countywide, not ready yet. And again, it comes down to local match. We can find all these amazing grant opportunities opportunities, but if we don't have that, even that 10% or that 25% available, that's the question we need to be having, is ARA suitable if there's no local match for anything? So I think that I've enjoyed working with all of you thoroughly, getting to know each and every one of you, but that's a conversation that needs to be had.
Let me ask you this, a county our size, how much should we, I'm going to use the term escrow. You know, if we had a 4,000 series fund, that was an escrow for grant money, right? What dollar amount, off the top of mind, just throw something out. I mean, $500,000 is, how much would you need to, every year, to have adequately resources to be able to apply for these various grants out here and have the reserves to be able to cover the match?
Well, that's difficult because.
I know it is, but it's just, but let me do this. Let's approach it this way. In a perfect world, okay, you know, of course, this depends on the current federal administration power, right? Okay. But can we conceivably, you know, apply for and receive, say, $5 million a year in grants? 2 million, 3 million, how much could we get?
There's no limits?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Oprah does, but other people don't.
Depends again on the funding source and where that's available from. So for like SS4A, for example, they had what, a minimum of 250,000 up to 5 million, 25% match. And that was what we wanted to use for Indian Hill, but we didn't have the planning documents.
So we made $1 million at 25% on 5.
Yeah.
Same this one, Jim, 500,000, 10%, $500,000, what? That's a heck of a return on investment for.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
I get it, but it's just how you cash flow it.
But if 200 people show up with that kind of thing, we still gotta have a bunch of money.
Right.
It is,
I like the idea of budgeting that.
Well, we should.
Yeah.
what are we missing out for if we don't have this escrow is the
If we
question.
figure $2 million a year in grants availability, that should leave it, you know, in a 25% match, we should have $500,000.
Yeah, okay, there you go. All right.
So let's say we had $500,000 in grant, how would it change our interaction with you and the county?
Well, I mean, for one thing, these kinds of transportation issues, I've heard that
Transportation.
constantly.
Home residence, occupation rehabilitation, so you're talking those areas.
Yeah, I talked to the Parks Department about some capital improvements that they need to make to their facilities. I hear about those happening, like the Health Department, right, has some like upgrades to buildings and things like that.
Oh, okay, let me ask you a question. You say the Park Department, all right? So let's say we took additional money, we're coming out of the innkeeper's tax, would that be a funding source?
Yeah, usually it's just cash, as long as you've got cash available and you don't mix federal with federal. I mean, that's, you could even.
So that could be the matching fund.
And that goes to a question I was kind of sitting on, waiting until all this was over. Are we able to fund this grant, matching fund out of innkeeper's dollars since it's infrastructure and
So out of
potential
your,
beautification of the county for
right,
tourist purposes?
Tourist
I
enjoyment?
mean, your innkeepers,
Because I know we're setting up an economic development portion of that and other aspects.
Well, you get quality of life, economic
Quality of
development,
life.
tourism, and.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
So I think this ties into all of that if we're going for grants.
Promotion and encouragement in the county of convention and visitation development. So, right, your language in your statute is pretty broad, right? So could you talk to the CVC about putting in their budget some amount of money to go towards Park and Rec that certainly qualifies under promotion and encouragement in the county of convention and visitation?
So we could leverage that money then with a grant matching. That's great.
Assuming that, so, you know, funders don't want to hear, oh, you've got this great idea, where's the design? You know, you got to think about some other things to get ready before the application is as well.
Yeah, that's one of those things we're wanting to do is that library of projects.
Right.
So we just did a pump track over there. Would you have been able to be involved with that, you know?
So from that conversation with the DNR, it was deemed that we were not ready to move forward.
Not ready, but if we were ready,
Yeah.
you could have
Yeah.
taken a position.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a
Okay.
50-50 matching grant program. Sounds like the pump track has that money available. However, I don't know what the timeline, it sounds like they've got their other half. So that's an example of something that could, the baseball lights at the, Deer Run, things like that, upgrading the facilities to make them ADA accessible. I mean, that's fundable with the DNR on a once-a-year grant cycle, so.
Getting another pickleball court so we could do tournaments, things of that nature.
Yeah, so those funding opportunities are available. I mean, the only, and that goes into your question about 250,000 for DNR up to, so now you gotta find $250,000 for the minimum grant request. So, it's, you gotta have that money available, but then also other things set up. And if you do set things up, please let me know, and then hopefully we can try to say, well, they paid for all this engineering work. What does that get us? Does that get us a little discount off the bill? Because that happens with the Okra grants. If you do something 18 months in advance that incurred costs, sometimes you can get that on your local match. So
well, let's circle back to this whole point of this conversation. 14th, July 14th, is this, the application has to be submitted.
August 15th.
Oh, we have until August 15th
Yes.
for you to submit the application for this $500,000 grant.
So it is, August 15th is when it's due. I don't like to put any materials out in public hearings until I get a resolution from you all, a confirmation of where local match is coming from, because I need that into public notice, so.
So we need to bring this back up on our regular meeting in July, and then you need to create a resolution.
Right, you guys would have to try to look to see where you're talking about grabbing money from. I mean, is it unappropriated cash reserves? Is it?
Well, I'll work on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just, that's from timing standpoint. You said August 15th?
August
And
15th.
Whitney, you have a template for the ordinance, right?
Yeah, I've got a resolution, I've got everything. Again, you heard this yesterday, we have this for 8 other communities in the
Right,
state,
right.
so it's.
Well, yeah, you know Susan, right?
We've seen each other.
Yep.
I'm just trying to work out the logistics of it.
Yeah, right. Is Trina still in the office, Trina?
No, she retired last August.
I figured, yeah. So we always worked with Trina.
Because the resolution has to be passed at a regular meeting, and if the
It was.
deadline's August 15th, then we've got to get this done in July.
Correct.
Because we also need to have the public hearing, 10-day notice, I need to
Okay,
say.
so let's do this. You give her the resolution, let's put this on the agenda for our regular meeting in July, and then I'll look and talk to Jerry about where we find $50,000.
Could you also, playing off this escrow fund of saying, hey, here's what we could do, like you just said, we weren't ready for certain things. What would it look like for us to be ready to utilize matching funds? And, okay, the sources we're seeing are possibly through Brown County Community Foundation, looking into it, plus I just had one distracted, the innkeeper's tax or things of that nature. Could you write up maybe a one-page thing saying how we can position ourselves to be ready for all this?
Yeah,
That'd be very helpful.
getting set up for major grants and things like that, absolutely.
Gary, the other
What
piece
kind
of
of
that,
things are we ready for? What kind of things do we need an engineering report on? I mean, what are the requirements to have a shelf,
So, of course,
a shovel-ready project sitting on a shelf?
That's a great question. So, from my knowledge, and, it's sort of, each grant has a different minimum qualifications. You have to meet a threshold review and things like that. Honestly, having a detailed budget is like super helpful for me and the committee, because if you deviate from that, they'll get upset. But honestly, if you're trying to do any kind of construction, you need to have estimates or, a little bit of design. Any architect is going to receive someone else's design work and say, we need to change this, so they build in those fees already. But really, if there's a major project you want to work on, just having a study or a capital improvement plan.
Okay, so we wouldn't necessarily have to have a PER, but that's something that would be.
Maybe for utilities, and that's something I think you work with an engineer on, but for these types of things, just showing that you're ready from day one, having a few of those plans in place and just having an overall sense of the project. Like, you didn't just write the project for the grant, so,
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was just saying, it's just, the other thing we do on the bigger plans is expand that comprehensive plan to include annexes for all these particular areas. not the one, you know, we give those, like wastewater treatment, we give that an honorable mention, roads and bridges, we give it an honorable mention in the comprehensive plan, we give broadband honorable mention. That's not an honorable mention, those are annexes that ought to be expanded. So when we're looking at the safe, like this one, look at the, what was it, the Safe Streets and Roads for All, man, where's the annex that identifies our needs? We don't have one. And so we lost out on this grant because we didn't plan ahead. So we're doing that. Part of that RED grant, we get that READY grant, we'll start developing these teams that create these annexes. If we don't do that, we'll do an RFP maybe or something. But that's the key document, one of our key documents. We've got to have more detail for what we want. So if you've got these, Stellar comes down and they got all this money for us, we ought to have, wow, here's our list of priorities that we've vetted for the past couple of years. Shouldn't come as a surprise or last minute thing. We got to get ahead of it. And that's our intent.
Yeah, so let me rephrase this and feed this back to you to make sure I understand what you just said. You got quadrant 1, important and urgent. Quadrant 2, important but not urgent. We have got to stay in the quadrant 2 box. Okay, important, not urgent. We've got to get prepared in advance to know exactly what it is we want to be able to accomplish in the next, say, 5 to 10 years.
Correct.
1, 3, 5, 7, 10.
Correct.
Once we have all the documentation, this language reading, annexing, all this stuff that's involved, then we proactively and aggressively go out and start looking for the grants.
Yes.
Because what we have been doing historically is the grant people show up and says, hey, we got this right here, and we're over here going, whoa, 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 yeah, I think we could use this over here. And that's got to change. Right, that's got to change.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Because we're not ready.
Do you want to talk about RED?
No, I think they were there.
Okay.
We don't need to, but Jimmy, you were there. You guys heard last night's meeting on the
Yeah,
the grant, no matching.
Free capacity.
It's free money.
Yeah.
Right.
It's free labor, free expertise, you know.
Yeah, because I think that something that I find is getting pulled, okay, well, we need to focus on Indian Hill now. Now we need to finish Hall Creek Trail. Now we gotta, and it's sort of like, okay. And so we had a big meeting at the end of last year talking about this NDOT program that's available every year that we know is coming up. And it's like, okay, we don't know where the trail is going. We have to talk to the property owners before we get to that meeting or that application. It's kind of like.
I don't like piecemealing. I don't, personally, my business, I don't piecemeal. Just don't do it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it's almost subtracting from the due date, and it's like, okay, we need to
Yeah.
get that easement now.
Right.
We need to talk to DNR about where they'll let us put this bridge in. We need to, so those kinds of things, and I get pulled in on those meetings, and I'm happy to do that, but it's just kind of like, okay, so we're here now, and we've read up on the project, what are we gonna do about it? So I just, that's been my experience, and I'm happy to hear that we want to participate in the RED program and get a better idea of what our priority, our Q2, quadrant 2 project.
Yeah, so Gary, my takeaway from this conversation with her, what was your first name again?
Whitney.
Whitney, sorry.
You're okay.
I know you don't look, sir, and I'm not spending time with you. The 10 grand that we've got budgeted for ARA, okay, the next couple of years, just facilitating and you really acting more in a consulting approach. Because you got consulting. Well, let's back up. You have information to inform. And then for those that want to be educated, because those are 2 separate issues, right? So you have to inform, to educate, to consult, to where we can move towards being very proactive on the subject matter. But that is probably going to take a good couple of years to really get organized.
I'll take a year to 18 months is my time.
Yeah, so just the 20 grand over the next couple of years, just to do that has an enormous amount of value in my opinion.
Yes, it does.
Plus any grant money that we might get in. So.
Okay, briefly along those lines, there's another item in the budget, I'll just go down this. These are areas that the innkeeper's tax is looking at being able to fund, and I want to see how that would overlap with some of what you're doing. I'll just read these off to you for reference frame. Historical, such as Pioneer Village, fairgrounds, park and rec, for instance, pump track, pickleball court, disc golf, splash pad, which apparently is a big thing. I don't know if there's going to be value. baseball diamond upgrades, lighting, such as like infrastructure, such as workforce housing, overlook, covered bridge, arts and installations, and EDC, regional EDD, trails, Salt Creek trail improvements, maybe make the little thing there to a lighted thing, so it's a river walk of sorts. Trail maps and wayfinding signage, community shuttle program. Any of these things have any potential grant related opportunity? Because if this money came in, then we could leverage it very strongly.
Yeah, so again, what I'm hearing is a lot of trails and parks. So again, there's annual funding opportunity that comes from the Department of Interior, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It's a 50% matching program. About 40% of what you've said to me is eligible, doing trails, making that splash, installing a splash pad, those sorts of things that you would normally have to pay out of pocket, but they meet you in half. So, we've Indiana destination development, those sorts of things.
So if we, just as an example, if we wanted to put lights along the trail there and call it a river walk, is that something we could probably get grants for?
What I'm hearing is you want to make that ADA accessible, it's all about the pitch.
Well, that's ADA related, huh?
Yeah, it's all about the pitch and who your funder is. And so is this an economic development issue? Is this a health issue? Is this a quality of life issue? So it's really, it's closely related to all of those categories, but it's really what your funder wants to hear in the narrative is that there's an older population in Brown County who cannot walk along the trail safely at night,
Facilities right out there, yeah.
So, yeah, it's all about what you've done, which will universally fit these different topics. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Potential. So there's potential.
Yeah, and I'll say just being on the state and federal side of grants management now, I had to rip apart a grant agreement the other day because of executive orders and things like that and budgeting. I've heard, different federal agencies are getting budget cuts and things like that. So it's been a really wonky last 6 months for me and my business.
Yeah,
and
new
so
administration and all that.
Yeah, so it's just, thank you for your patience and all of that, because it's just been kind of like, wait a minute, what? You just kind of get whiplash about some of these things. So it's just been an unusual time. So yeah, but I think that one day, the valve will turn on, is what I keep calling it. It's a valve. So
It'll open up.
So we just gotta stop being wonky.
Yeah, just walk straight and, hit our target. But, so, yeah, but again, I don't want to take too much of your time today. So if you guys have any questions,
Thank you.
yeah, I'll see you later this month. So
Perfect.
Thank you,
all.
Reggie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We can take our restroom break.
Thank you.
Hey, Whitney, Susan wants to.
Sorry. Old car, sorry. Okay, good. Okay, so.
5-minute restroom break.
I mean, I tried to.
I don't know what it stands for, but it's strategy breaks.
Yeah, something like that.
It used to be a vending company in Los Angeles.
Right.
Remember Eric?
Yeah, they had little.
Yeah, they put out vending machines. Eric?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I don't know what, I asked, she's right there.
It's kind of crazy.
There,
And so we were
American
thinking about trying to
Redneck Association.
as much juice out of the government. Like, if we can get them.
We could come up with a whole boat.
Okay, so if we get 5 or 10, can we get them to get 25 or right?
So we all having fun,
$40,000 cost. Okay.
Oh, that's
Right.
show you
I mean, like, I don't know if that's possible on any of your.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just need the board of directors of the foundation to approve that, and if, for ads and things like that, because I've had, in Franklin, I have the Development Corporation get the local match actually, so they just needed to vote on that as a board.
Yeah.
So I
okay.
can have their conversation.
Well, because.
Yeah,
No, I
right.
do.
I agree, and there's other implications are, like you look at the social engagement. Get out of it.
Right, yeah. So,
So, yeah.
anyway, I wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah.
That word came up, and I went like,
That's good. Well, it's not good, but it's reality.
Yep.
It's good reality.
Yeah.
Hey, Patrick or Joel, you guys gonna fight for presidency next next year, right?
Right.
Come on, Kim, I mean, you have all the
Because
fun.
so like,
Actually.
yeah, so I'm in
so much
Jackson
to
County.
There is lots to learn.
And
There is.
We're all
supposed to be
learning
in the community
constantly.
college.
Even if you've done it for a while, you learn something all the time. It's just
Gift 7 and Gift 8 came out? Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
it's just
and
kind
Dan
of,
was like, you know.
I mean, we went to that
stuff
conference
kind
a couple of weeks ago.
try
It
to
was
cash in and all of that money.
like,
Well, we.
more stuff to learn.
He was
Oh, yeah.
really between the
Still living in the
elections happen so often.
County.
There's so many new
you know,
people.
to
I'm
be
amazed
able to get
anything ever
some-
gets done.
I know, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, one person position, all the little legislative changes could come down, change us, like she says, we've only got one person with over $2 million and raising that rate. They positioned it as saying the legislature had to do something, so they just did something. They don't expect it to hold for 2 years because they're gonna probably have to go change it.
Yeah,
That's what they're thinking.
yeah, all this tax stuff that was happening.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
it's a
whole-
lot of money that's just sitting there.
But basically, what he's saying, they're being beat over the head,
Yeah,
so they know they're gonna have to change something.
right.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what they're doing.
You know, and then.
People at our age, I think we'll be dead first.
Yeah.
Give a bunch of amateurs reign over your county, what are you gonna get?
Just
You
think it's
change
that
them
way
up every
everywhere.
2 to 4 years.
I feel like
See that?
It's that way everywhere. And, you know, Congress, the Senate, same old crap. Of course, some of those people never die, they just smell that way.
So.
Yeah. There you go.
Just won't make you nervous, Joel.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate that.
He moved, he's still alive.
You know, yes, I've been instructed by my boss, because Toby
So,
here,
Mr.
do you know that
Padilla, what have you been up
like
to?
bridged it up?
Yeah.
I've been home warming my dog.
Grooming your dog?
Is
Oh,
that what you're
warming.
supposed to do?
Don't you do?
Women?
Just, actually, just across the field.
Nope. Keep him on pills.
Proactive women?
Yeah. They do most of it, you know.
That's flea and tick and
You know, I don't understand either, the heartworm, the flea tick thing, and give them the puma. Why don't they give that to humans so we don't have the ticks get us? Tick stuff.
I take my dog.
I've thought about it.
Tail wag.
I mean, why don't they have one, like, since if alpha gal is so bad, why don't they have a tick thing for us? I don't know how it relates with the ticks. It's apparently they bite them and leave, or don't inject, or what goes on.
And he may say
Do
that.
dogs get alpha?
I am cold.
Okay,
I should have brought it in.
and
I
I've
have to
taken
put my other
15
sweater.
or
I'll go
20
see if
ticks.
it's. I got one downstairs.
The advantage I got is it's quiet.
Gary.
And those little black ticks, they can't get in, but they get it on him. And then I see him crawling around on him, trying to figure out what to do, and I just take him off that way and just run down the carcass disposal or whatever. But, no, I don't think they can bite them, they have an odor. And mosquitoes will land on them.
So why can't we have
Yeah.
for alpha gal?
Yeah, you have to get your vet to prescribe them for you.
That's interesting.
Sounds good.
I hope that works. It does for some and some it doesn't.
Alpha gal hit that predominant such that they would, go out and actually make one for humans.
Boy, and those little ticks are just
I didn't know he had
prolific this year.
And I think the
There's a
one
little
thing,
bitty
like the
black
thing that you kind of mentioned about,
Yeah.
hey, we've got to
which shows up a lot on my snow white dog. Which I might-
Oh, good, well, that's good to know, that's good to know. Yeah, I think I have a sweatshirt and cards, no, I may.
Okay, I've got
another jacket downstairs. Okay, Jack, sweater.
I've only had one that I found dug into me. My problem is, they get on my dog and then he gets up in my bed. They drop off in the bed.
Thank you, I was freezing.
You can adjust that thing over there.
That too.
That too.
Excuse me. Just trying to figure out how to watch it.
That's all there is to it.
I had to figure it out.
Yeah, with all these ticks, the whole head
Yeah.
thing is shocking.
Yeah, I was just
An issue with,
I just asked you as to how with the property tax roll.
they can do it to anything.
That way, I don't, you know, but, these income surveys are not funny to me because it's like, we need to serve at a certain level of responses to. Yeah, this, right? We need to tell people this is legit. Right. Something that we're running into with the repair.
We're down to
programs
one chicken.
is we're spending, and it's like,
Raise the bunch.
I actually need these documents for you for real. This is not a joke.
Yeah. Free
Turn
range
yourself
pay.
in. You know, so we have to verify incomes and everything.
Well,
So
my
it's
wife
just kind
kind of solved that when we had that.
It's
But
almost
then
like
she read that if
boots on the
you
ground.
feed the crows,
Yeah,
they're
that's
natural
what
predators.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
So
thinking.
she
And
feeds
it's
them every day, and the
and,
crows
you know,
fall
Sue
off.
Wimber
That's
was
what I
very
even read
sweet
that.
and nice, and he was offered to help, and a
As
couple
a
of people
human being,
invited to him.
they never forget that.
So
And they
I'm
will
happy that
grab
people
on you,
are
they'll do everything to make your life
gravitating.
You ever watch
towards
them
it.
around the house?
I do not, so, is it in your office?
I'll get it.
Okay.
Yes.
I appreciate
You
it.
need to, no problem at all.
Thank you.
July 14th is, yeah, is their meeting, so if we need a resolution, shoot it to me that day.
Okay. Right. And probably the only difference would probably be,
A coop that was going to keep that
you know,
crap out.
30,000 comes per
Yeah,
year.
right.
You know,
Right.
but it will be at 55. So,
Yeah, okay.
But
all
I
right,
still.
thank you.
Thank you.
Stay with me.
Yeah.
The reason I'm so
I know example of what should be able to be great. I mean, so it's not just you, it's just like, you represent what we're missing in terms of people.
How have you been?
Okay,
Good, good.
surviving, I should say surviving.
Surviving, yeah.
Because I really do. I've got my oldest will be a sophomore in high school and he plays basketball.
Oh, okay.
And so,
I look for
like
that.
the month of June.
No.
Probably gone.
Stuff.
Right.
Right, and so, like, quite literally, I'm like, oh my gosh, right, they're out of school, so like, you gotta get them to practice, and you gotta get them to weights, and you gotta get them home, and they have to be doing something, and then he's gotta turn around and be back in by like 3:30, so we can go someplace else, and I'm like, when do you drive?
I know, I remember it so well, and then that's a whole different thing, so, but I remember it's like 5 nights a week. in the
Yeah.
summer. Well, we're like year round,
Yeah,
and we live
He will? Oh, he is a herding dog,
if you
right?
didn't
Well, he's not a
go
herding dog, but
practice and
He's a
say,
hunting dog.
he's a hunting dog. He'll go get her and
yeah,
bring her back. That's how I found out what was killing the chicken, because I
sharing your clothes.
had a rifle in the
sure,
dog.
they start driving, and then you're like,
Oh, man.
Well,
I'm worried about the driving thing, I'd rather be driving.
I know, so.
Yeah, you and Sandy both don't have classes now.
Yeah, and she's doing okay, right?
She's
Yeah.
doing
Did you do LASIK?
Can't,
I had a cataract that came up just plain.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes, I
and
can.
in both eyes.
but I may not.
And so I had the cataract
Weapon
removal,
in the
went to
city
the
limits, plus you
upgrade,
can't shoot.
Yeah.
not the top of
that's
it.
correct.
But this was basically, they basically call this the dashboard lens, so I can read my dashboard, I can read my cell phone. Now read a book,
Yeah.
I opted to just for read.
With her,
Yeah.
Because most people, even if they get the top of the line, after a few years, you have to wear the readers. in.
Right.
So,
She just got hers done. She had hers done too. Yeah, she doesn't wear her, she's got no contacts, no glasses.
nothing, yeah, it's
She's
amazing.
been doing computer.
Yeah.
She's like, I can see
See that? It is amazing. It gets better all the time. They told me up to 2 months. We'll get clearer and clearer.
Well, so my roommate, when I was in law school, I had a roommate, she was a pharmacist, and she.
Okay, we're ready to start again.
And she did the LASIK. This was 25 years ago. And she's like,
Remind me that.
I have one.
It is amazing. Yeah, yeah.
A lot of eagles.
But she doesn't have one.
what do we all have?
She,
Oh, you have?
Yeah, but she's the lawyer. She does everything.
Oh. I have this
She
in my
doesn't mind, I
office.
don't need
she has it at her office.
I do have this
So,
guidelines manual.
I got these
Somebody gave me
yesterday.
one.
yeah.
Somebody just gave me one.
I did.
Gary just gave me
Oh,
one.
there you go.
I had mine from yesterday.
Yeah, it's just south. East of Tampa, all of a sudden we call it.
Yeah, I've been down in the office 3 times. I didn't take her tools down yet.
Yeah.
I can make a copy, Julie. What am I gonna do with this?
There's like
You bet.
several, Jim should have an extra one, he's got one holding
Okay.
this.
How much more time do I have left in my term?
Tim wants one,
Oh, we'll
Jim.
let you out, you're the president.
I actually scanned
I didn't go ahead. I don't have to pay.
Still scanned it.
Jim, do you have one for Tim?
Yeah, I think.
I'm not.
I do. I don't know. I'll share with you.
Yeah.
Free market capitalist.
All right, you ready?
Yes, we're gonna discuss perf, right?
No, we're gonna start with the auditor's office. And
Okay.
then I want to transition to the perf.
You got 1 hour for all.
Okay, well, I'm gonna try it now. I don't have this rehearsed,
Uh-oh.
so I'm flying off the top of mine.
What am I looking at?
Just hang on a minute, let's open this up. So first of all, let's start with, let me kind of big picture. ClearGov. Reedy Financial. Reedy, we're paying Reedy, I don't know what one we're paying them this year, but it's gonna be significant.
As of April, we have paid him $33,000.
Right.
So get a grant from ARA for reading.
I want to just real quick talk about Reedy. Reedy, Caitlin Schaefer has been working in the auditor's office. Right now, there's a 19-page document, I think 127 funds, that Julie and I and Doug Keaton and Caitlin are going to have a meeting because there's changes that they found, reconciliation issues that I don't know that really involves the council, this is the auditor's office. So they've been providing that service to work with the auditor's office and reconciliation to kind of keep the books and records and everything, make sure that they're accurate. Number two, Jerry Hickman, to date, who's the council person and the finance committee, so far have provided reporting. Now, the challenge with their reporting is you end up with 125 pages, and we're going out, they like to use the term financial planning, so they like to go out to 2030. But to date, there's been a little bit, there's reporting, which is information, which has been primarily very little in the way of education so far, not to say that that won't come, all right? And then very little on the advice side. So, because you got to keep in mind, you know, as a financial advisor or a municipal advisor, you know, the ultimate responsibility of the county budget is the council, period. It's not the auditor, it's not anybody else. So, you know, Reedy is not in a position to tell the council, hey, here's what you need to do, here's our advice. Because if they do that, then there's some liability issues. It could come back on them down the road. It's just like if I was Susan, you know, I'm going to be real reluctant to really hand out any advice because I don't want it coming back on me because that's how I have to operate, right? So that's kind of Reedy. And then you get into ClearGov. Now in ClearGov, and then you have WOW. When you look at a political, you know, the DLGF told me there's approximately 6,500 political subdivisions just in the state of Indiana. That's all, not the other 49 states, right? And it's not like these, you know, a school or a county government or city government can go online and sign up a subscription with QuickBooks. Okay, there is no large firm, 3 or 4 firms, you know, billion-dollar firms that supply the technology for the political subdivisions to be able to operate their bookkeeping, right? Doesn't exist. So what happens to make up for that is you get these small companies. So Lyle, for example, has got 65 employees. They're South Bend, Indiana. They've worked through the AIC. They've got a good product, right? But Lyle doesn't have access to $500 million in capital to be able to come in and really create a robust cloud-based system. So there are some limitations when you have small companies providing these accounting services, software services to these political subdivisions. So what's happened is you got this ClearGov company out in Massachusetts, which is a startup. You know, I don't know how much capital they raised to create the company. I forget the number of employees they got. I asked, but I don't remember. Basically what happens, what I see it is ClearGov sits on top of the WOW system. And ClearGov's value is really the ability to give access, you know, read, because you can control it, read only, to where the departments and individual, all of us, we can have usernames and passwords, we can have access to that system, we can go in online, and we can look at the data in the system. Now, the challenge with ClearGov, and I've already talked to Jerry Hickman about this. So Jerry Hickman with Reedy is supposed to be getting with Louie, right? Because ClearGov is somewhat of a threat to these municipal advisors. Because if they begin to take out market share in all the states, right? And these political subdivisions are seamlessly integrating with this cloud-based system, then they're going to eat up some market share of these municipal advisors because they no longer need these municipal advisors to provide their quote-unquote reporting. You okay so far? The challenge, especially the challenge with us, as I see it based off my 30-month perspective, is that the data, so last month and then in July and every month going forward, Reedy's they're going to provide this 30-day, 3-page report to us. So like this morning, I was able to pull that, look at the reassessment fund, and know exactly where we are on the reassessment fund. So that 3-page report every month, once we familiarize ourselves, but here's the challenge with that report. Is that report, they're pulling the data out of the auditor's office. So that any reporting, whether it's ClearGov, whether it's Reedy, whether who it is, they're pulling out a lot.
I send them reports.
Yeah, and so it's the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So what happened, and I'm just sharing with you kind of this last 3 or 4 weeks, what I've been thinking about, is this issue with the commissioners and the auditor saying, look, we've had a payroll clerk, but now we want that position to be employee benefits specialist. So that person's going to do all the onboarding, all the exit interviews. They're going to have to educate the new hires and existing employees on their employee benefits. How does the group medical work? Blah, blah, blah. So that takes a pretty good chunk of knowledge to internalize that. Internalization is where you can talk about something off the top of your mind because you know it that well. So then on top of that, they have to do all the payroll stuff. And, we've got, on average, I'll say 170 employees, depending on one day to the next, because that number fluctuates.
Which is an integrative thing, because actual payroll and this, what we have gotten back from the HR is basically all integrated.
Yeah. I commend the commissioners and auditors for combining those because that just makes perfect sense. But it's a lot of responsibility, and that is more of a management, it's an administrative capacity, because for goodness sakes, we can't afford to have any errors in that area. Okay, I mean, we just can't do it. So what happened was, I started thinking about this, I was thinking about pay grades, who are we going to be able to recruit, who are we going to be able to hire. But then while I'm thinking that through, I begin to realize that I don't really have a clear understanding of the role and responsibility of the auditor's office. I don't know. I sit here and tell you exactly everything they've got to do. So I got a hold of Julie. I went in. We spent 3 hours one afternoon with Julie. It was just you. It was Jesse. It was Doug, and it was Sandy.
Yes.
And we sat around the table and we talked about all the roles, everything that auditor's office has got to do. I was in there yesterday, talked to Julie, left your office, Julie, went to the recorder's office, got a copy of my deed, which I've never done before. And then I asked them, I said, because we got into a conversation about deeds. I had no idea that the auditor's office is responsible for processing all the deed changes.
It's a three-step process.
And Sandy is the only one in that, is the one and only person in that office that knows how to do that extremely well. I went to the recorder, a guesstimate is maybe 1,500 deeds a year in Brown County.
Sandy, myself, and Doug.
But it's 1,500.
Mhm.
So you have that 1,500 transactions going on a year in Brown County.
It's
right?
more than that, because it's not just deeds, it's transfers and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know, we don't really know.
it's
a lot.
surveys, it's.
So now take that, that's just deeds, okay? And then you have all the telephone calls coming in. So not only do you have telephone calls coming in from out of county, from in-county community members, and then you got telephone calls coming in from departments, and then you have people like me that drop in that cause problems, okay? So I walked out of that meeting overwhelmed, going, oh my gosh. So then what I did, and what I gave to you all, is I went to the State Board of Accounts, and what you have in front of you is that first attachment is simply the table of contents of 14 chapters from the State Board of Accounts that outline the responsibility of the auditor's office. And then what I included was chapter 4, and I'm not going to go through it, but chapter 4 literally goes through, line by line by line by line by line, all the stuff they have to do. And the one thing that I threw out at Julie and her team is, Julie, from a January 1 to December 31st, how many mandatory reporting is your office required? Not only with the Department of Local Government Finance, but with the State Board of Accounts. And then I don't have a clue on federal reporting requirements, on all the other requirements that they have to do reporting. So I went through that. And then I realized, oh my God, here we are right now. And Julie and I yesterday had a conversation. It was an interesting conversation because she took me back to year 2020 when COVID came out. And if I'm correct, we only have one council member right now that's on the board from fiscal year 2020, and that's that man right there. Darren Burke. The rest of us were not on the council. We were not on the council in the year 2020 during COVID. Julie took office, I think, in 2019. She had a full staffed office. She had 2 senior people that had been in the auditor's office a long time. They knew their stuff forwards and backwards. Well, sometime in that 2020, 2021, the council pitched and did some sort of a buyout where they pushed a bunch of senior employees out of the county. So I don't know the details on it. All I know is there was an aggressive movement to kind of, hey, we need to get rid of some people. So they pushed them out during the COVID years, right? Well, now we fast forward to where we are today. And right now we have Sandy Kane, who's got, what, 31 years, I think, something like that.
She does.
She's worked in, I think, multiple departments, so she is cross-trained, which is extremely important. Doug Keaton has been with the county for 11, okay?
12 years.
And that's it, because Jessie, bless her heart,
Just
started in March. So she's a newbie, right? And what I know is for me to go into that office and try to learn, let me say this, and I don't mean this in any disrespect. Yeah, WIS can write all these fancy job descriptions until they're blue in the face, but that doesn't tell me what you do every day. So I know what I'm licensed to do and all the myriad of different subject matters that I can talk about when it comes to life and money, and there's a whole gamut of stuff, right? There's not too many subjects I can't talk about. But do I really do that every day? No, I do a few things every day. So you got the job descriptions, but the reality of it is you've got the reality of what do these people do every day? How much business is rolling in every day, right? Just because the county's got 17 paid holidays doesn't mean that the workflow process stops. It continues. So if you take 17 business days out of everybody's off for 17 holidays, when they come back in, you got a pile of stuff.
And there's time constraints on certain things. I mean, you can let something sit on your desk for more than 24 hours and those kinds of things. There are time constraints on things.
So, okay, be careful if you break my train of thought,
I'm
so I
sorry.
won't remember where I'm at.
I'm just adding
I'm
to.
just trying to get through it, get over it, trying to see if I can make it through, because I don't have this rehearsed, I'm just.
Just start over, Jim.
Sorry.
So, all right. Let me ask all of you a question. Have you ever gotten up in the morning and you went, got my to-do list, I need to do this, 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 and this. I'm gonna get this done by the end of the day. And you were really fired up because you wanted to get all those tasks taken care of. And then sure enough, the end of the day rolls around and you didn't get anything done. Does anybody ever experienced that in life? Huh? Has it happened to you? Okay. Welcome to the wonderful world of the auditor's office. All right? Because right now, even when the auditor's office finally can find and get this fourth position filled, that's empty, that's currently vacant, okay? Now, I'm going to operate off the assumption it's going to be very difficult to find a turnkey person to come in and just take that over and start running with it.
Yeah.
All right, number one. Number two, the other issue, and what I'm proposing for all of you council members to really think about, is we got to have 5 people in that office. That's all there is to it. I'm thoroughly convinced that we can't operate off of 4. We've got to have 5, because if you've got a 5th person, and Julie had a staff of 5 at one point in time. I've also included in your documentation, if you go look, there's a page in there.
You mean 5 apart from Julie or 5 total?
6 total.
Okay.
6 total, because there's a page in there that I pulled from Gateway.
Go ahead.
Page from Gateway, that, let me see this, because I don't have it, I handed them all out, I don't have any. I'm trying to pull from memory. This is straight off of Gateway, this is the cash and investments for 2024. And just to give you an idea, in 2024, the county had $72,207,000 in revenue. We spent $64,449,000. We had $23 million in cash reserves at the end, and there's 178 funds. And keep in mind, a fund is your revenue source, so that's your receipts. There are 178 funds. There are roughly 30 departments. There's probably 700 line items inside these funds. And then you get into the line items, and there are literally thousands of transactions. Because in each side line item, you get, Doug, Jesse is paying attention to the receipts, the revenue coming in. Doug is over here having to do the payables, right? The commissioner's office has to review those payables.
Correct.
Right? We got 2 open issues right now with payables that Doug can't process, right? Until the council can get back with him. So he's got to take that and kind of put it off the side and try not to forget about it, right?
Yes.
So everything on this page, that 72 million, and that all flows in and out of the auditor's office. If we don't have an adequately staffed auditor's office, and more importantly, an adequately staffed auditor's office, and try to keep the turnover down, to where not only can these people be very competent with their role and responsibility in their positions, but more importantly, they're cross-trained. Now, why is the cross-training important? Well, the cross-training is important, and right now, Julie, right now she's only got 2.5 people. Right now, even if she hires this 4th person, let's say she has 4, based on the employee handbook, okay, there are 2,000, everyone is compensated in this county off of 2,080 hours. But based on the handbook, the employees are only required to work 1,560 hours because of paid time off. So if you take 1,560 hours divided by 2,080 hours, that's 25% of the time. So what that means is Julie has 4 people, but there's always one person gone every week. Somebody's gone. So she's over here with 4, basically trying to operate off 3. But the challenge with 4 are the 4 cross-trained so that somebody that's doing the receivables can jump in and jump into the payables when they get the payable guys gone. Furthermore, who's answering the phones? Because this is a pet peeve of mine, personally, at McAvoy County. I'm in doing a research project, on investing, and I'm working on a report, 1, 3, 5, 7, 10-year returns, working on a sport. I'm in Excel, I'm having to work at Morningstar Advisor. I'm zero in, I'm locked in, I'm focused, right? I'm working because I got to make sure I don't make any mistakes. And then all of a sudden somebody walks into the office, plops down, and wants to shoot the bull for 30 minutes. Or the phone rings and I get a phone call and I got to take a call. Every time I get interrupted, it breaks my focus, it breaks my concentration. And when you break that, then it takes me some time to get back over here and go, okay, where was I at? What was I doing?
3 to 7 minutes.
Is that what it takes?
Yeah, 3 to 7
Okay, well, it
minutes.
takes some time, man.
Depending on the-
Well, but if you get somebody that comes in and they're full of drama, then now I'm mostly, right, it may take longer. So I want you all to take this and think about it and really spend some time thinking through it, because I'm of the opinion right now that that office has got to have 5 staff. Now, to support that claim, you've also got a copy in here of the 2025 adopted budget. And then in addition to that, you have a copy in here of the 2026 labor cost for the clerk's office. So the clerk's office has got 6 people now, and I have that. And it's got the pay grades in there, it's got the base salary. And so keep in mind, everything that, and I'm not trying to diminish the importance of the clerk's office, because every department is equally important. But the bottom of the funnel is the auditor's office, because everything that goes in the clerk's office all flows to your office.
That's correct.
Everything in the county is, and just think of the auditor's office as a funnel. And the challenge with that funnel is if we don't have that, if we don't, we the council, because to me, I had an employee at the county told me that he believes the most important department, or the board, most important board in county government is the council, because the council is 100% responsible for fiscal policy. And if we don't do our jobs right and make sure we allocate this money away and make sure we don't run out of money, then we are 100% responsible for that. But in order for us to do our job, we are completely dependent on the auditor. Because if we get garbage information out of the auditor's office, then what are we gonna do? It's the garbage in, garbage out. It's like going to a gas station buying bad gas, thinking your car's gonna run good.
And the 3 of us are doing our best not to give you garbage.
Right, yeah, I'm not saying that you're giving us garbage, but I'm just trying to, I guess, for dramatics,
And Doug,
illustrate the point.
just to be quite frank here, Doug and Sandy have been a godsend, because they jump into whatever needs to be done if you need help doing something. We all answer the phones, we all go to the counter. There's no other choice.
Right. So what I'm advocating for and what I'm proposing to you all council members is clearly this needs to be in the budget for 26, but we also need to resolve it for 25. Okay? And I'll work on finding the money to how to cash flow it. I've looked at it, we'll see. But it's, to me, we've got to make the auditor's office top priority and do everything we can to support the auditor. Let me give you another example. And Tim, this gets back into policy, county policy. What goes on is if we don't have a policy and someone submits, let's say you're dealing with labor, and the payroll person gets an email from a department, and the department, what they get is a scanned copy of a legal pad that's handwritten. And then they get this, and then they're supposed to go through and decipher what it is. And let's say the information they get from the request from the department is inadequate, okay? So they don't have all the information they really need. Now, part of the challenge is we didn't have a policy in place to teach the departments of the process and the required information, so vis-a-vis, therefore, we don't have any forms, okay? To say, here, this is the form, complete the form in its entirety. So we don't have that. So instead, the auditor's office gets these requests from all these various departments. Well, in my line of work, what I do is if we submit something that's inappropriate, or not inappropriate, but incomplete, so for example, we custody with Fidelity. You don't send incomplete stuff to Fidelity because they kick it back immediately and simply say it's not in good order and we're not going to process it. And then I'm like, what are they, so then you got to run, scramble to try to resolve, what do they need, what do we leave out? Because typically it's our mistake on my end. But if the auditor's office were to kick back requests right now to the departments for information that's not in good order, what would happen?
I would hope that the department would say, oh, well, I'll get that information to you. I'm sorry, but probably people throw fits.
Yeah.
They throw fits, the auditor's office is a scapegoat. And what ends up happening is now the individual in the auditor's office ends up having to do the work that the person at the department should have done. Because they didn't go above and beyond and make sure they had everything that the auditor's office needed in order to process the request. And that's a day-to-day ongoing issue, which then bogs the whole thing down.
That is correct.
It bogs it down, it gets clogged up.
Jim and I had a discussion yesterday about creating two new policies, one for payroll and also one for claims. And we're going to work on that.
Right. So to me, on the policy issues for the auditor's office, is the council needs to be working very closely with the auditor's office. And we, as a council, need to support the auditor's office. So if the auditor's office has someone in the county that, has an issue, they need to come before the council, not to the auditor. Okay, because I think it's grossly unfair for the auditor to have this enormous amount of responsibility, constantly being under the gun, individuals standing in judgment, pointing fingers, trying to assign blame. It's the auditor's fault. I mean, it's just we can continue to operate that way, I suppose, if we don't choose to do that. But I would say that would be the definition of insanity. Now, I'm going to does anybody got any questions or anything? Because that's all I really wanted to do is just float my thinking for the last few weeks. Because there's nothing we can do today. Yes, sir.
Are you going to do this level of analysis with every department?
Well, that's should it be done? Absolutely. Because we have an organizational, well, and you're a CPA and we work in corporate. We lack organizational structure. I mean, everywhere you look, there's just a lack. Now, Tim and Kevin are doing fantastic, okay? But there's a need for, in a perfect world, I would love to be able to have a consulting firm come in, do workflow processes, create organizational charts, right? and create the organizational structure that's lacking. And so there's a term
You know, my observation over the last 30 months, you know, I'm not making a judgment call, it is what it is. But you got a lot of people just operating off of tribal knowledge. And corporate America has a huge problem with tribal knowledge as well. So the private sector's got a problem with it, and municipal government has, maybe the military may not, but I'm assuming that most of these political subdivisions. So nothing's in writing, we fly by the seat of our pants, this is how we've always done it, this is the way we did it before, and we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm just trying, if we don't acknowledge that we've got a challenge, and we don't, you know, don't start operating at a higher level of consciousness, right, that we're aware of it, and then we've got to, you know, begin to try to tackle it as we move forward. Now, any other statements or questions?
How about all the special meetings we have that takes her away from her work?
I know. There you go.
I mean, because you made that one comment
Oh,
to me one day. Now I still got to go back and do my work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But guess what? It's in that state board of accounts.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have any choice.
She's gotta come to these meetings.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But so how big of a staff do we need there?
Well, I'm saying, she had 5.
Yeah.
She had 5, and I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus, but there was a council member in the past that said, well, if you wanna go ahead and get rid of one person, you can pay your other 4 people more money. Okay, and she made a fatal mistake when she did. She
I
should have
did.
never have done it.
I agree with that.
Too, right?
Yeah, I lost 2.
Yeah.
They decided to take the buyout and left.
Yeah, so we can't, yeah, so, all right, now
And we
there's
did
that
eventually
issue.
get one
Now,
back.
I'm gonna dovetail this next subject into this issue. As you all know, the auditor's office has a specific employee that we've all received resignation notices over the last several months. And this has to do with 2024 and the rescinding the vote that was made in 2022 to rescind the policy because of the PERF 11.2% being in violation of the adoption agreement. If you all remember those conversations, right?
Is it okay to vaguely discuss this in public meetings, Susan?
And this broadly,
We're not overstepping,
In terms of discussing personnel?
yeah, confidentiality.
We're not mentioning.
No.
We're not.
I just want to make sure we're good.
Structure.
Yeah, okay, so,
Keep it vague.
well, I'm not gonna be, I just said,
Yeah,
we all know the history of that.
yeah, no names or
Yeah, we don't need
anything.
to bring it, because it's not, yeah, now, so, we as a council voted to rescind that and void it out, right? But then we as a council basically kind of dropped it. And we've not addressed it. Well, when you give somebody something and then you later come back and take it away from them, that's not real good on building trust, right? And there's still people within the county that are extremely frustrated with that, right? Because A, it should have never been done in 2022, and then because we had to rescind it in 2024, right? So it's still out there, that toxic issue is still there. So, when we made the decision to do it, I made a conscious decision just to step back and not say anything and stay out of it, just to see what happened, okay? Well, circle back and hadn't gone away. So after long and hard, you guys got a copy of this. And what I am proposing is that we adopt this as a new policy. And let me read it out loud. You ready? All right. This shall be known as, unless you guys come up with a better name, Brown County Government Employee Seniority Stipend. So it's a new stipend. The Brown County Employee Seniority Stipend applies to all county government employees who meet the eligibility requirements of the Indiana Public Employees Retirement Fund, known as PERF, and continue their employment with Brown County government while taking their monthly benefit from PERF. perf eligibility requirements, it's years of service and age. So the first is the rule of 85. I've got 30 years with the county and I'm age 55. You can take your pension. 15 years of service and age 60, you can take your pension. 10 years of service and age 65, you can take your pension. For those Brown County employees who meet the minimum perf eligibility requirements and elect to begin receiving their pension benefits from perf while continuing their employment with Brown County government, will receive 11.2% of their base salary as a stipend until they choose to terminate employment with Brown County government. This Brown County government employee seniority stipend only applies to those employees who have had continuous employment of 5 years and who are currently employed with Brown County government once they begin receiving perf pension benefits. The Brown County government employee seniority stipend benefit does not apply to those who have terminated employment and or are rehired by Brown County government. The Brown County government employee senior stipend will be classified as earned income, and all employees receiving this benefit will be responsible for all federal, state, and local income taxes. The decision to initiate your pension benefit with perf while implementing the Brown County employee seniority stipend is an irrevocable decision and should be taken very seriously. So where I'm at with this is in 12/31 of 2024, which I've attached it when I gave you guys all that turnover ratio with the county stuff, is we've got 27 as of then, based off my math, 27 employees out of 174, okay, that qualify to meet this benefit, they could currently take their pension benefit, all right? Now, here's the issue. I don't want to lose those people because we don't have enough of them as it is. Half of our employees within county government have less than 5 years worth of service. So we got a lot of newbies everywhere. We've got to have these senior people that have been around, they know what they're doing, they've operated in multiple roles, right? And not to celebrate the fact that they have been with the county, to send a message that we value their employment with the county. We don't really want them to leave, right? And then lastly, and I'm gonna, this is me, you know, as a financial planner in Columbus. Over the last 35 years, most, and I'm talking about W-2 employees, most W-2 employees, when they go to retire, most of their money, okay, is sitting in IRA accounts. So it's before tax. Most households don't have, they have very little in the way of cash in the bank. And when you retire and you got enough money, you know, to me personally, you know, an average household ought to have at least a year's worth of living expenses in cash. We'll use Brown County cash reserves to be able to pay, you know, for example, I want to complain about Jackson County REMC and receiving a $450 light bill. Okay, I like that, that's fun. I don't mind complaining about that, but I don't want to have to worry about paying it. Those are two different issues. If you lack the cash reserves in the bank, and then on top of it, if you look at someone who has worked in county, in the public sector, county government, they don't have probably much in the way of cash in the bank. And then the other challenge they got, their only source of income in retirement is their Social Security and their pension benefit. That's it. So they don't have any cash. So what do they do when they got to replace, worst case scenario in the county is you got to replace a $25,000 septic system, or you got to put a new roof on your house. That's why that $500,000 grant thing earlier today is for. It's for those people who don't have any cash, right? They have very little in the way of household income, and they're having a real tough time just trying to make ends meet. So to me, with us passing this resolution and implementing this policy, what that does for these county employees is they can continue to work, and now they got their pension benefit coming in, they've got the stipend, and let's say the pension benefit is $1,000 a month. So that's 12 grand a year. They still got their earned income coming in. Hopefully they can live off that earned income. And then, hang on, let me finish. But if you take 11.2% of a $42,000 a year income, right, then that's about a little over $4,200 a year. So now that household now has a $16,000 additional gross income coming in, and they'll have to pay their 20% tax off of it, right? But that increases their monthly cash flow to hopefully they can build their cash reserves and build up the amount of money they got in the bank before they finally pull the plug and say, I've had enough, I've been doing this for 45 years, I don't want to do it anymore. And so that's my rationale behind this proposal. Thank you for listening.
My question, because you and I were both horrified when this whole thing started out, found out that the policy was illegal. And that's what, I mean, it wasn't, that we just didn't like them. It was illegal.
Right.
What we were doing
Never
was
done
illegal.
Right, absolutely.
How does this differ from what we were doing?
First of all, all this is a stipend.
It's not being put into an account.
It's given in cash.
Well, it's a stipend, number one, and number two, it applies to everybody that works within county government. We don't discriminate. There's no discrimination going on here.
By higher end, I don't want perf, I want 11.2. Let's say opposed to that.
You can't do that.
Well, that's discrimination.
No, yeah, that has, we don't, Gary, don't conflate.
I'm not, I'm just asking.
Well, hang on a minute, I understand what you're asking.
I am a good conflator though.
You're a conflator, don't conflate. What you're raising is a whole separate issue that we have nothing to do with.
As long as it's clear.
Because it's
That's
perf.
fine. As long as it's clear,
Yeah,
that's
that's
fine.
perf.
Is that true? It's perfectly fine?
Right, it's not like it's a choice for the employee. When the
Yeah,
employee
okay.
comes in and hires on with the county, they're in perf right now because that's what you're in.
Just want to make sure, that's all.
Yeah.
Where are we in the discussion of the process of getting out of the?
Okay. All right, I finally, Susan, I've got a file in my computer, okay, with a whole boatload of documents in it, all right? I've got a key person, I got my mentor within Perf. This lady's great. I got 2 pages worth of notes with the dates and the times and everybody I've talked to and everything I've done. I can't start that until October, November, and it's gonna take me every bit of probably 6 months. All right, and what's fascinating with it is I got all the documentation, it goes back 1974.
When they kind of signed up. with-
Yeah, this lady's great, she emailed me, I don't forget how many PDFs I got, there's a bunch. And she's a real sweetheart, and so what she's gonna help me with is what we're gonna do is just basically start at the beginning and do a full-blown discovery. Okay? Because it's highly unlikely the county's ever done a full-blown discovery, just so that we understand what we have, how much money's in it. So, for example, one thing I did learn that I did not know was that PERF, when you go to their website, I think that 50 billion is what they've got under assets under management. But what I didn't realize is every political subdivision that's involved in PERF in the state of Indiana, they segregate those assets. So every political subdivision has to stand on its own actuarially. Okay, and I did not know that. And that's a good thing to know. I'm glad they do it that way, because that's fair. So we've got to go through and then the big work, Julie, this gets into the auditor's office, is I've got to do a census. And not only do I have to document all the existing employees on PERF, but I've got to go back and document all the employees that have left the county that were in
That are
PERF.
receiving.
Right, it's a huge
We're
project.
still on.
Right.
Right, well, because here's the
We're
issue.
eligible.
Well, here's the thing, you gotta remember, once you meet the years of service, so you work for the county for 10, you start at 25, you leave at 35. And you go to work for private sector ABC. Well, guess what? When you turn 65, you can come back and get your pension. Ain't gonna be a lot, but you get it, and then you gotta pay it. So it's the years of service is the key piece, and then you just gotta wait until you're old enough to meet the definitions. So how many people do we have in the background? Okay, right, historically, that, because what we've got to do is we've got to document that, and then it's got to go back to PERV, because the actuaries have got to look at it to calculate how well funded are we. And once they can determine how well funded we are, we'll determine how much additional, if we were to withdraw from PERV, right? How much would we have to continue to fund PERV to be able to make sure we're adequately funded to take care of those that already met the definition of retirement. So it's going to be a huge project. Of course, literally right now is not a good time to start that. And so I'm going to have to table it until, October. I figured once we get this budget stuff done, then I can kind of get started back on that.
Is there still an appetite or a desire to steer us away from PERF by anybody?
Well, I'm trying to go into this, okay, if I'm talking Jim Kemp, then I've got my own biases, and I'm trying to keep my biases out of it, because this isn't about me, it's about the employees, okay? And so all my goal is to simply go through and do a very thorough discovery, do the reporting, present it to the county, right, and then let you all decide what's in the best interest of the employees going forward. And the county.
So you're at a point right now, either proving or disproving your biases.
Yeah, right, basically, yeah. Well, I'm trying to stay extremely objective, right, and then base it off facts, and keep my personal biases out of it, which I know what they are, right? But then keep in mind the other challenge is, we've got, based off 25, we got them around up. We got $7.5 million in labor costs. And then we've got another $3.5 million in employee benefits. So that's 11 million, right? And we've got, we have a workforce that, whether they're a single parent household or they're a dual income household, if you have two county employees, their husband and wife, and they're bumping $100,000 a year household income, right, living in Brown County, and they're in their late 30s, early 40s, so they got through, they got the kids, got the house bought, and all that stuff. They're not in too bad a position. But if you go to a single income household, at $35,000 to $45,000 a year, they are living paycheck to paycheck. So I understand and have an enormous amount of empathy for people, and especially if they're younger, if they're under 40. I'm 30. When I was 35, I never thought in a million years I'd be 65 years old. I figured it'd take a lot longer than what it's taken, and here I am. Okay, yeah, again, it sucks. So, if I look at it through the perspective of that younger workforce, give me as much money as you can and pay me the most you can and let me make the decision what I do with it. You with me? Because at 30 years old, am I worried about retirement? No. So I would rather have the 11.2% in my paycheck, and if I want to put it in my 457B, I'll do that. Whereas if you take somebody else that's over 50, now that's a different perspective. So we're going to have to kind of look at it, and we're going to have to look at our workforce. The one thing, though, that this experience, this has been a really fascinating experience, is, and I don't know if I buy into it completely or not, but supposedly nationally, we got, millennials, and then what's big before millennials, the younger kids? Gen Zs, right? So everybody today just kind of job hops, right? So I don't know how much of that contributes to the turnover that we've got, within our workforce. I don't know that because I think historically, what you all have shared with me, local county governments dad farmed, mom was a homemaker, right? They didn't have any health insurance, didn't have employee benefits, so mom went to work for county government and worked there for 30 years, got a pension check with help with some of the social security, you know, they lived happily ever after. Well, I don't know how much of that is true today, right? You know, it's just, so I think we as a council body, it's one of those big rocks. And it's gonna take some time that we're gonna have to discuss it, educate ourselves, increase our level of awareness, and then hopefully be able to ask the right questions so we can make decisions that are in alignment with what's in the best interest of the employees who work for Brown County government.
Well, and if they go away from paying into PERF, let's say that happens, so then our, like the actuary money that we're paying in, that's supposed to fund people that have retired already, depletes,
Right.
right? So that's not good either.
You have to, well, you phase out of PERF, inevitably what would have to happen.
Okay.
Because see, even if we made a decision to terminate PERF, right? And take that delta and give it to the employee as a pay raise, and then do a match on the 457B, right? Even if we did that, you'd have to have a cutoff date.
Is perfect fixed benefit, like what you put in is what you get out, or is it?
Yeah, there's a
Or is
formula.
it the social security type?
No, it's a formula.
Okay, so it'll only deplete proportionate to what's been put.
Well, on pensions, just think of it this way. This is the easiest way to do it, I think. Let's say you retire and you got $1 million in your IRA. So you take your 401k, you roll over to an IRA. Well, you got $1 million. Let's say you and your wife have got Social Security income of 40 grand a year. So safely you can pull, depending on how you invest the assets, because that's the other variable, you can pull 4 to 6%, okay? So let's just use 5%. So if I've got $1 million portfolio and I can earn 6% over the next 30 years, I can pull 5%, increase that 5%, 3% by inflation, because you're gonna have to step your income up over time, right? Then the money will last for 30 years. You won't run out of money. Now, so when you think of a pension, just think of a huge pot of money. Now you got a whole bunch of people you got to pull out, right? Well, you got to make sure you overfund that pot of money so that pot doesn't run low. For example, Social Security Trust Fund. All right, I guess that thing's supposed to hit the wall here, right? And about 2032, something like that. So so what has to happen is Brown County, and say make sheriffs got their own pension, right? Well, we got to make sure we have to continue to fund it because we got people coming in pulling incomes off that thing. Because if it's not, and because the other factor is your returns on the portfolio. You have 1 year, like we had a couple years ago, the S&P was down 21%. So when that portfolio takes a hit, right? Then guess what happens is that distribution rate goes up, right? So you've got to watch it, and and over time, you should be okay. But that's the reason the private sector got out of the defined benefits, these pension plans, because of what they refer to as unfunded liabilities. And so they walked away from it, and it started in the mid-'80s. And that's where everybody mad dashed to the 401ks. Now, the public sector has continued to hang on to these pension plans. Does that help? Okay. Well, that concludes everything I want to say.
I have a question then. How many additional employees do you need in your office to make it work really well? And I'm not talking about slave labor. I'm talking about how many people really do you need in there?
2.
Probably 2 would be good.
Additional?
3 would be good, but 2 would be good. I actually need the payroll person back really bad, which we're conducting interviews next week on. Then we need Excuse me?
Payroll benefit person or just payroll?
Just payroll. Yeah, I couldn't get any kind of, I can't wait for you guys to make a decision. I have to make my own decisions when it comes to my office, and we need that person. Randy's eating me alive.
Experience, and everybody said, boy, I had several millions of dollars in capital equipment improvements, of which didn't earn me a penny.
Right.
Until I had an employee there in that shop running that equipment. And if I had 50 CNC machines and one operator, he could maybe do 2. I mean, there's no point in putting that capital equipment there if you're not going to use it.
Right.
It's the same situation we've got here, kind of.
It is.
We've got to turn the work out, but we're not going to be able to turn the work out until we get the employees to do it. So it's,
We definitely need someone to help with these, answer phones, counter,
Yeah,
so that the rest of us can actually get,
and
you
let
know,
me throw
work
this
on what
in
we
there
need.
To you, goes back, we're currently at a AA- credit rating by the S&P. And what influences that S&P rating, all right, are the State Board of Account audits. And that is all interdependent upon the auditor's office. So if we look to improve our cash position, we look to get the credit rating back to a AAA. I don't know how long ago it was that the county was a AAA rated, or if ever, I don't know. But my goal would be to get the credit rating back to AAA, the best, right?
Or to get it to.
Increase our cash reserves, reduce our dependence on debt financing. You know, so it's short-term debt, and long-term debt financing, fine. This short-term debt financing, we ought to be able to have the money to pay for cash for that, right?
one of the biggest issues I ran into was really a big decision for me to sell my corporation. The young people won't come to work. I had several times when I would interview a young man for a skilled labor job. He had all the tools, like training, and I was thrilled. And 3 days later, he still hadn't showed back up for work, and I called him, and he said he just didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
And I wish that were just a unique experience, but
I hear
it's
that's
not.
everywhere, right?
It is everywhere.
Well, here, I think.
My problem is they keep going to other offices.
Well, here we have limited resources. I mean, we don't have, can't school teachers, for instance, that level of person, intellect, you might say, cannot hardly live here. And that's a drain in intellectual capital that we cannot tap into. So we don't have much to really go at.
Well, it's going to make a challenge of her finding these places. That's what I'm alluding to. It doesn't matter how many people we need if you can't get them, period.
True, very true.
Hey, there's a CPA back here. You got any interest working in the auditor's office, would you?
I think you're in good hands.
You haven't retired from Cummins. Have you retired from Cummins yet? Oh, so you can come to work.
I don't think she needs my help.
Well, thank you for letting me speak anyway.
Just don't do it again.
That's been my impression pretty much. If you open your mouth, you will create problems.
It's 12 o'clock. Anything else we need to cover?
The only thing I would like to ask is based off of this seniority stipend thing. What's everybody, I mean, how do you perceive that? Good, bad, indifferent, neutral?
It's legal, right?
Yeah, it's legal.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Well, we need you to do a 3-year discovery process on PERF.
No, not with the stipend. The stipend, we can do that now. We can do it
You
right
do
now.
it in your meeting. You'll have to do it in your meeting. You can't make decisions right now.
No, I mean, but my point is,
Yeah.
that's what I meant to say.
It's interconnected with the PERF. Are we, well, no, it is, are we keeping PERF? Are we maintaining PERF as the structure of the way? I don't want to implement something right now that's going to change
Hang on,
based on something.
let's address that. That's a good question.
4 months down
Let's
the road.
address the question. Anyone that qualifies for the age, right, and the years of service even if the council chooses a year from now or 6 months from now to withdraw from PERF, we will have to continue funding PERF for those employees.
I understand.
Well, okay, and we will have to, there's no way I would favor of withdrawing from PERF and having people who are close to meeting that years of service requirement. So, you know, when we.
That's what I'm saying, there's, and that's
But
what I
this
was saying.
stipend thing
I
has
understand that
nothing to do with that.
completely. We can't just cut some people off from PERF who are depending on it, who work for it.
Well, no, we're not gonna do
I
that.
know, I understand.
This
But I'm
is to
saying-
address that.
But that doesn't have anything to do with the stipend.
Well, it kind of does.
No, it
because
doesn't. This is two
the
separate
stipend-
issues.
The stipend goes into PERF, correct?
Okay,
Or
the-
11.2.
No.
The minute, no,
Well, I mean,
the minute these employees, we have 27 employees right now that can continue to work for the county, that can go in and annuitize their pension with PERF and start receiving their pension benefit. Okay, the minute they do that today, right, then we stop paying in the 11.2.
They have to.
Period.
where does that 11.2 go?
Well, we keep it if we don't
No,
pay
where
it.
does it go now?
Huh?
Where does it go now?
To PERF.
You just said it doesn't go to PERF.
Okay.
Anybody that's actually still in PERF and not retired, it goes into PERF.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Anybody that's
Once
retired,
they retire and start collecting PERF, then that
they collect
11.2
their
is
PERF,
Goes away,
yes.
right.
But
So
they
that's what I'm
shouldn't be
saying.
punished
If
for
we-
coming back to work just or staying at work.
Right, I understand.
Okay.
You're on a different tangent from what I was.
It's the same tangent.
Can we, I mean, there's a couple other things we need to work out in that. Like, are we going to offer, instead of, is PERF mandatory?
I mean, if somebody goes
Automatically,
to work,
if somebody
currently, yes,
starts
they don't have any
now,
choice.
okay, that's another aspect of it. Are
But
we-
they're not
No,
gonna-
hold on.
Okay.
That's another aspect we need to look at on that. Are we, it's like, for the younger employees who come in who don't want PERF,
They don't have that ability.
that's something we need to address.
That's that getting out of perf concept, like, that's that we're gonna, if you get out of perf, you have to have a hybrid plan. You're like locking in your perf, your pension over there, so you're gonna have to fund that for that group of people that he's gonna have to figure out who got vested in their perf and maybe has severed service with the county, but we're still going to have to pay them once they hit a retirement age and start drawing their perf. So like, you have a frozen plan over there that you're still going to have to fund a little bit too. And then you're talking about another retirement, a different retirement plan with the county. So if you get out of PERF, you would have some sort of hybrid plan that addresses both of those issues.
Right.
But right now, that's not an option. If you're employed by the county, you're full-time, you're in PERF. That's it. That's all there is to it. When you start collecting your PERF, you've locked in that amount at PERF and the county doesn't contribute to PERF anymore. The issue that you were having is you were contributing that to a 403B, a deferred comp plan. And it wasn't deferred comp because it wasn't the employee that was sending it over there.
Right.
So if you do a stipend of 11.2%, you're going to have to calculate how many employees are you doing that on? What's their payroll? What's this going to amount to in terms of how it's going to hit your budget? And then you're going to pay your 7.65% on that.
And at 30 employees at 42 grand, it's about 11 grand and for FICA tax is what it is. So it doesn't cost the county any more money than what we're already paying. So we can do the stipend. Doesn't cost the
But you don't pay 7.65% on the 11.2 contribution per.
No, I know.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is if we implement the stipend,
If it becomes a stipend, then they do.
if we
Then you do.
implement this proposal.
Right. So you'll increase your
And you
tax
have,
liability.
let's say we have 30 employees and 40 grand, that's $1.2 million, right? And then, and then that you've got the 11.2 that's going out to the employee, right? But we've already been paying it to PERF. The only additional cost to the county will be the 7.65 that we have to pay on that. It's like 140 grand or something. Yeah. It's a little bit of a cost, but it's like 10, it's not 10, 11 grand. So it's like, who cares? And what it does to me is it sends the message, it helps, it's a good thing for the employee, period. It's a great thing for these employees.
But my question is, should we extend this? The mandatory perf enrollment, is that county level or is that state level?
County.
Okay, so we could eliminate that instead.
Only if you get out of perf.
You have to get to that.
You have to get out of perf in order to stop that.
So we cannot then make the option for a younger employee who doesn't want
No.
perf
Not yet.
to pay them.
You don't have that plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to
But there's something that is available for that if we went with a perf hybrid.
No.
Well, we'd be getting out, you'd essentially create a retirement plan that's separate from perf, and you'd lock in those people that are perf eligible. And again, there's a frozen plan over there that you're gonna have to continue to fund.
Okay. And that even for the people who are active in perf, who want to continue perf, if we lock
Right.
into it, then that would freeze them. They wouldn't be contributing to it anymore.
Can I ask a question? Once I start drawing perf, it's 30 years of service, 55, is it 85 the number?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the rule of
Once I hit
85, where there's
55,
20 years of
and I've
service.
got 30
there's
years of service, I can start drawing perf,
Right.
whether I'm employed or not.
Right.
At that point in time, no more money goes into perf
Right.
for me, right? So what you're proposing is give everybody in that situation an 11% increase.
Right.
Correct. That's what he's proposing.
Which is the problem,
But if
we
you're not
dealt with
working for the
before, that
county,
you had.
the county's not going to be contributing to 11.2%.
Does Jackson County do anything of that nature?
No, Jackson County contributes both the employer and the employee portion into perf, so we contribute the 11.2%, and then we also contribute the 3% annuity.
So if somebody did what we do, they quit and they come back, do you have any of that?
Right, if they retire and they start drawing their
That's what I mean,
perf,
they retire.
they don't get any additional stipend.
So you're
Come
not
back to
doing
work
this
for the county.
stipend, okay?
And you would only be paying that on the people who have retired and started drawing their perf.
Right.
So just because they're eligible for retirement doesn't mean they're drawing their perf yet, and you're not paying that
Right.
stipend on that.
Right. They'd have to make that choice.
I'm
Pull the trigger.
eligible for retirement right now.
Okay.
I'm not doing it, and I could, and still work.
All right. Anything else?
Well, what do we want to do with this? Do we want to bring this back up on the agenda for the July meeting? You guys want to table it? What do you want to do?
It needs to be put to bed.
I know, it needs to be put to bed. We need to make a decision. Stop stonewalling. Do you like it? Yes. Okay. What do you, you all right with it?
I like it. I just
Julie,
think
can we
there's-
put this on the agenda for July?
We can.
All right.
Sure. You mean our formal meeting? Monday
Well,
meeting?
no, just this, unless you guys can.
For the
think of
perf.
name, the Brown County Seniority, whatever the name of it is, seniority stipend. Yeah, yeah, put
But then
that,
we're creating another stipend.
We are.
but it doesn't cost us any more money,
Right.
other than the FICA tax.
Well, that's the thing. I think there's things I'm not opposed to it. I think it's something we need to solve this.
And I
It
guess,
needs to be fair and equitable across.
well, but it
every
is,
line for everybody.
because it allows.
It's just a pay raise, really. That's
Well,
all.
not
Yeah,
for
it's
everybody,
just a pay
but for
raise.
the people
Well,
who
I-
retired.
Well,
Yeah,
But that's
that's,
Yes and no.
what we're creating for the people that it's.
they're not.
if they haven't been here long enough.
I know, but I'm saying, what are we, they're just.
They're getting their 11%, it's going into perf.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the minute they take their,
Yeah.
here's the deal. This stipend, what I hope happens, is allows the employee to go ahead and take their pension. So now they have that money, I mean, so, you know, we'd have to go, I could get calculated, and bring the thing to calculate. It allows them to receive the pension. I don't want them to retire.
Right, it lets-
I want them to stay,
It lets the
continue working for
experienced
the,
people
stay.
with the institutional knowledge.
Yes.
Stay
To
here.
stay, and then we give them this little bump, right? And now they've got more money coming in every month, which helps them position themselves for when they actually do pull the plug, however many years down the road that may be.
And I'm not arguing, yeah, I think you think I'm arguing, I'm not arguing.
No,
against it, I'm just saying.
I'm okay with you, even if you are arguing, I'm all
We're
right.
not, I'm not arguing.
Let's argue.
We're arguing.
I just wanna
Arguing
make
about
sure,
arguing.
I just wanna make sure we don't have any lizards laying under stone somewhere that we're not accounting for.
Well, for that-
I wanna turn over, I wanna turn
Then
over
do me
the
a
stones.
favor from now until our regular meeting, then think about it.
Yeah.
Figure out if there is anything I've missed, because I may miss them. I'm not saying I'm good.
And I just wanna make sure we're not.
I'm just waiting to
Well,
adjourn this
We're not
thing.
creating landmines.
Right, I don't want to do that. Because actually, that's what started this in 2022.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for your 6 employees that got cut off from this in 2024, it will cost you about $29,000 this year. If those people average $40,000.
7.65?
No, at the 11.2%
Okay,
and the 7.65.
yeah.
Because they're not getting the
Yeah, I
11.2%
got
right
you.
now, right? So
Okay.
they're getting a stipend
Right.
and then you're gonna
But
pay the
we
tax
were
on it.
paying that.
We
Right.
were paying that in 24. You were paying that in 24.
Yep.
Correct.
Well, can you drop your hourly rate down to like $50 an hour?
Not for you.
Not for us, we're special.
Yeah.
We're special.
Are you going to adjourn the meeting?
Special ed.
Are we able to adjourn?
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Just say, we're just